Chapter 4569. So that's how it is. Sure enough, there are pros and cons. It's impossible to have all the good things. Linny nodded. Opening a window meant closing a door. Otherwise, the Dragon Clan might have been able to rule the entire Heaven Stage Island. Then how do you cultivate? The Pentademon looked at Lin Yi and asked. Me? If it was any other place, the most I could do was to absorb the energy from the surroundings and turn it into my own. But in this place, there's another way, and that's to use the murderous aura of the 5 elements to refine my body. This method is much more effective, but Lin Yi shook his head with regret. But what? The Pentademon asked curiously. If I want to use the 5 elements killing chi, I can only stand on the high platform and cultivate. But I can only touch the weakest 5 elements killing chi at the bottom. For me, the effect is not very good. If I can go a bit closer to the middle and touch the more powerful 5 elements killing chi, the effect should be much better. Unfortunately, if I let the spirit bird carry me up, I won't be able to protect it during the process of cultivation. Linny helplessly shook his head. That's simple. Your spirit bird can't withstand the 5 elements killing chi, but I can. I'll take you up there to cultivate. The Pentademon laughed. That's right. Lin Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. He had forgotten that the Pentademon could also fly. Moreover, the 5 elements killing chi was not a threat to it. Instead, it was afraid of it. It would be great if the Pentademon was willing to help him. However, Lin Yi still hesitated and said, But won't this delay your cultivation? Cultivation, my ass. I told you that for me. Sleeping is cultivation. I just slept for more than a year. I have to wake up and relax. The Pentademon curled its lips and said. Then, the Pentademon used an unknown magic power and sucked Lin Yi onto its back. Then, it jumped into the 5 poison swamp and floated a bit above the bottom for Lin Yi to cultivate. As Lin Yi expected, not only was the intensity of the 5 elemental killing aura here stronger, but the quantity was also greater. Immediately, he found the state he was in when he first started cultivating. His body was undergoing a delightful change almost every minute and every moment. His progress was once again tremendous, which made Lin Yi very excited. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months had passed. At this time, the deadline for the task of returning to the North Island had been completely exceeded. North Island, Blue Cloud Pavilion, Lin Yi's residence. Although Lin Yi and Huang Xiaodao were not there, the courtyard was not deserted. Instead, it was noisy. Lu Bianren, Ku Zhongla, Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, and Li Jingming were all sitting in a circle. Except for Shanghai Laner, the special senior sister, Lin Yi's people were all here. Although Lin Yi had not been in the 3 pavilions for a long time, and it seemed that he did not deliberately build his force, the people around him had become a force that could not be underestimated. Now, they had become a force that could not be underestimated. Needless to say, Lu Bianren was a senior figure in Blue Cloud Pavilion. Ku Zhongla had long been the 3rd pavilion master of Welcome Pavilion, and Xiao Ran was his assistant. The newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion were completely in the hands of the 2 of them. As soon as they entered the pavilion, they would naturally be labeled as Lin Yi's people. In addition, Li Jingming and Xiao Hongkai, with their superior strength and foundation, had gradually made a name for themselves among the outer core disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Stand firm. The power of Lin Yi's people could be said to be thriving. Every once in a while, everyone would regularly gather in Lin Yi's yard. They would take care of each other and strengthen their relationship. However, contrary to this good situation, the people sitting in a circle at this moment were all frowning. No one said anything for a long time, and the atmosphere was extremely dull. I say, why hasn't Boss Lin Yi come back yet? Did he encounter some trouble over there? Xiao Hongkai finally broke the silence. The anxiety on his face was obvious. No matter how big the matter was, he would not be like this with his hot-blooded character. However, it was related to Lin Yi. Not only him, but everyone present could not hide their worry. Yes, Senior Brother Lu, it has been more than half a year since you separated from Junior Brother Lin. Even if you want to hunt down the evil cultivator Wu Baoyang, the matter should have come to an end. Why is there no news at all? With Junior Brother Lin's strength, he should not be Wu Baoyang's opponent, right? Senior Brother Ku Zhongla said with a frown. Even if he is not Wu Baoyang's opponent, with Boss Lin Yi's ability, it should not be a problem for him to protect himself. He is not someone who will rush to his death knowing that he is no match for Wu Baoyang, Xiao Ran said with certainty. He had absolute confidence in Lin Yi. He did not believe that Lin Yi would die in the hands of an evil cultivator like Wu Baoyang. With Boss Lin Yi's strength, Wu Baoyang should not be a problem. I am worried that he is unfamiliar with the place. If he is forced to be involved in other disputes because he is chasing after Wu Baoyang, or even get himself into trouble, then it will be hard to say, Li Jingming said in a low voice. You can rest assured on this point. The evil cultivator Wu Baoyang has died in the hands of junior brother Lin. This is something that everyone in the South Continent Sea region knows. Lu Bianren comforted everyone. Is this true? Everyone suddenly became spirited, and their burning gazes fell on Lu Bianren. It is absolutely true. A while ago, I asked Pavilion Master Yu to use the internal information channels of the 3 major pavilions to inquire about the South Continent Sea region. There was a South Continent Escort Agency conference held there, and junior brother Lin killed Wu Baoyang in public at this conference. There is no doubt about this, but Lu Bianren could not help but stop speaking. But what? Senior brother Lu, tell us quickly. Before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, their hearts tightened and they quickly asked. After killing the young one, the old one came out. It is said that on the 2nd day after Wu Baoyang was killed, Wu Baoyang's master, the West Mountain Sect master, suddenly came to the conference and ordered junior brother Lin to be killed to avenge his disciple. He is a mountain opening stage evil cultivator, Lu Bianren said with a gloomy face. Mountain opening stage? Senior brother Ku and the others were all at a loss when they heard this. They had not even heard of the mysterious ascension stage, let alone the mountain opening stage. After all, they were only masters of the foundation establishment stage. Above the nascent soul stage is the mysterious ascension stage, and above the mysterious ascension stage is the mountain opening stage. The existence of that stage can dominate an area without any suspense. If he was in our Blue Cloud Pavilion in the north, even if he is not the number 1, I am afraid he is not far from it, Lu Bianren sighed and explained to everyone. Chapter 4570. If that's the case, could it be that junior brother Lin has already? Senior brother Ku Bai's face turned pale, and he did not dare to continue. The others' faces were ugly, and their eyes were filled with horror and hesitation. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Who cares about the opening mountain period? Boss Lin Yi will never die in the hands of an evil cultivator. Xiao Honkai roared in a low voice with red eyes. I also believe that junior brother Lin will definitely not die in the hands of the Western Mountain Elder. In fact, although the Western Mountain Elder hates him to the bone and wants nothing more than to kill him, junior brother Lin did not die in the hands of the Western Mountain Elder on the spot. At least from the situation at the Grand Meeting, he successfully escaped. Lu Bianren nodded towards the crowd. Escaped? Everyone was stunned when they heard this, and then they all breathed a sigh of relief. They looked at Lu Bianren with some resentment and said, Senior brother Lu, can't you just say everything in one breath next time? You made us so nervous, our hearts can't take it. Hee, all right. Lu Bianren smiled apologetically, and then continued. Although he escaped at that time, junior brother Lin's situation is still not good. Facing the pursuit of West Mountain Elder, who is an opening mountain period evil cultivator, the result is still not good. If he could really escape successfully, he should have returned by now. But there is still no news of him now, Sai. With Boss Lin Yi's strength and means, I believe he is definitely not dead. He is not coming back now, but he is hiding somewhere to avoid the limelight. He must be dead. Xiao Honkai said with conviction. Yes, Boss Lin Yi is a lucky man. Since West Mountain Elder couldn't kill him at that time, it will not be so easy to kill him later. Xiao Ran nodded in agreement. I think so too. From what you've said, Brother Lu, I can see that Boss Lin should be a household name in the Nanjosi region. If he really died in the hands of the West Mountain Elder, the news would definitely spread like wildfire, and it wouldn't be as silent as it is now. Therefore, the lack of news isn't bad news for us, but good news instead. Li Jingming said in a unique way. Right. Now that junior brothers have said that, I feel much more at ease. Junior brother Lin will definitely be fine. Senior brother Ku Bai nodded repeatedly, paused for a moment, then turned to Lu Bianren and said, "That's right, senior brother Lu. Now that the deadline for the mission has passed, let's first think of a way to cancel junior brother Lin and junior sister Huang's mission, lest they cause trouble when he returns in the future. And that's fine too. I've met Jia Fan a few times before. I'll go talk to him tomorrow. With junior brother Lin's status, it shouldn't be a problem." Lu Bianren nodded. No matter what, Lin Yi was a disciple of Shanghai Tianhua. Although there was no news of him now, with Jia Fan's smooth and slick handling style, he should not make things difficult for such a small matter. While everyone was talking, the courtyard door was suddenly kicked open. Everyone's expression changed. They looked at the door and shouted angrily in unison, "Who is it? Oh, I didn't expect it to be so lively here. Why are you guys hiding here so sneakily? Why don't you tell me?" The newcomer glanced at everyone and immediately sneered with his nose in the air. This person was born with a golden complexion. His eyes habitually narrowed into slits, and there was an occasional ominous glint in the corner of his eyes. Intentionally or unintentionally, he constantly emitted a terrifying murderous aura, causing people to not dare to look him in the eye easily. Everywhere he passed, people would look at him. Those with a slightly weaker temperament would even be scared away on the spot, let alone confront him head-on. After seeing the person's appearance, the expressions of everyone in the courtyard immediately sank. This was especially so for senior brother Ku Bai and Xiaoran. When they looked at this person, their expressions became as gloomy as water, and their eyes were spewing fire. There was no other reason. This person was called Ma Daoqiang. He used to be a new disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion, but of course, he was no longer one. "Ma Daoqiang, what are you doing here?" Senior brother Ku Bai immediately said with a cold face. Although he was a timid and honest person, he had been the third pavilion master of Welcome Pavilion for a year, so he had more or less cultivated a bit of a superior aura. Moreover, facing this Ma Daoqiang, his heart was surging with anger. It was rare to see an honest person like him so angry. "What am I doing here?" I haven't asked you what you are doing here. From today onwards, this entire courtyard is mine." Ma Daoqiang sneered. As a new disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion who had just graduated, he broke into the inner gate carelessly, not because he was muddle-headed, but because he was really full of confidence and had nothing to fear. Like Lin Yi, this Ma Daoqiang was this year's newcomer king, even better than Lin Yi. Now his name had spread throughout the three pavilions, and he was deeply valued by the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion. He had been regarded as the future hope of Blue Cloud Pavilion. All the miracles that Linny had done back then, this guy had done them all. Not only did he do it, but he did it even better than Lin Yi. A few days ago, he had signed up for the inter-sect competition just like Lin Yi, and as a mere newbie, he was invincible in the inter-sect competition, sweeping all the way, and finally becoming the new king of the newcomers. "What did you say? This courtyard belongs to you?" Bullsh *T. Xiao Hongkai was instantly furious, pointing at Ma Daoqiang's nose and cursing. In the past year, he and Li Zhengming had been cultivating in the outer gate of Blue Cloud Pavilion and did not go to the welcoming pavilion to stroll around, so he did not have much interaction with Ma Daoqiang. Although he had heard senior brother Ku Bai and Xiaoran mention it, he had never really taken it to heart. In his heart, Lin Yi was a unique existence. Any random clown who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth wanted to surpass boss Lin Yi. There was simply something wrong with his brain. Now, he actually dared to unscrupulously snatch Lin Yi's residence, especially in front of everyone. This was intolerable. I hate people pointing at me the most. If you dare to point at me again, I will kill you. Ma Daoqiang looked at Xiao Hongkai with a cold expression. His whole body was filled with murderous intent, as if he would really explode and kill at any time. The prohibition of killing between the disciples of the three pavilions seemed to be nothing in his eyes. "What? Kill me? All right, there's no time like the present. I've long heard that you, a new disciple, are arrogant and despotic. I didn't expect that hearing about you was really not as good as meeting you in person. Why don't you come and kill me now?" Xiao Hongkai did not get angry but laughed instead. Not only did he not put down his finger, but his provocation became even stronger. He was a person with a real temper. Who cared if you were the newcomer king or not? No matter who dared to provoke him, he only had one response. F***CKU. Floating Astronomy. Chapter 4571. Senior brother Ku and Xiao Ran were shocked when they saw this. Their anger toward Ma Dongqiang was even greater than Xiao Hongcai's. After all, Xiao Hongcai had never interacted with Ma Dongqiang before. However, between the two of them, one was the third pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion, and the other was the senior brother who was in charge of the newcomers. They had been dealing with Ma Dongqiang for almost a whole year. The others might not have had an idea of how terrifying Ma Dongqiang, the new newcomer king, was, but the two of them were very clear about it. Originally, Lin Yi had pushed Ku Bai's senior brother to be the third master of the Welcome Pavilion. That meant that he had a bright future ahead of him. Many second-generation practitioners with powerful backgrounds couldn't even hope to get that position. Moreover, he had a strong helper like Xiao Ran. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he didn't have to worry about anything. However, in reality, the two of them did not have a good time in the past year. Instead, they were bullied a lot. The other newcomers were fine, but the key was Ma Dongqiang. They could not suppress him at all, and they even had to be bullied by him. The situation was just like Meng Jueguang, who was killed by Lin Yi. After all, this kind of thing was not honorable. Therefore, every time they met with Lu Bianren, Xiao Hongcai, and Li Jingming, whether it was senior brother Ku or Xiao Ran, they did not deliberately mention Ma Dongqiang. In their minds, it would be fine after Ma Dongqiang entered Blue Cloud Pavilion. They did not expect this scene to suddenly happen. Ma Dongqiang was definitely not an ordinary newcomer. In terms of strength, he was even stronger than Lin Yi. Xiao Hongcai did not know his background. If she acted rashly, she would be at a great disadvantage. Senior brother Ku and Xiao Ran quickly wanted to remind Xiao Hongcai, but it was too late. This is what you said. Since you want to die, I will be merciful and send you on your way. Ma Dongqiang sneered and looked at Xiao Hongcai disdainfully. After saying that, he didn't make any special movements, but a crack suddenly appeared under his feet. The crack extended to Xiao Hongcai at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. Xiao Hongcai didn't even have time to react. He felt that there was nothing under his feet, and his whole body sank. Only his chest was exposed. As for the lower half of his body, he could not move. Even struggling was an extravagant hope. Watching this, Lu Bianren and the rest of the Clear Cloud Pavilion disciples were shocked, unable to conceal the shock on their faces. Although Xiao Hongcai had only joined the Clear Cloud Pavilion for a short period of time, his strength could not be considered weak when compared to all the other Clear Cloud Pavilion outer disciples. But in front of this Ma Daofa, he couldn't even block a single move, not to mention he didn't even know how this opponent attacked. It was too scary. Before anyone could react, Ma Dang's figure flashed, and in the next moment, he was already above Xiao Hongcai's head. He was only one step away from Xiao Hongcai, and he looked down at Xiao Hongcai with disdain. Even at this moment, Xiao Hongcai still maintained his previous posture and pointed his finger at Ma Dang's nose. TSK, I heard that you were also Lin Yi's little brother. Why are you so weak? This is too disappointing. Like servant, like master. It seems that this so-called newcomer king, Lin Yi, is only SOSO. Back then, Shanghai Tianhua had a whole new level of respect for him. It seems that I really made a mistake. Ha 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 ha. Ma Dongqiang laughed unscrupulously. He was the new newcomer king, and Lin Yi was the previous newcomer king. They were only 1 year apart. Moreover, they were both newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Naturally, they would be compared in all aspects. This was inevitable. In his heart, Ma Dongqiang, Lin Yi, whom he had never met, had already been trampled on by him countless times. Otherwise, he would not have spent so much effort to break all the so-called records that Lin Yi had set. If not for the fact that he did not have the chance to fight with Lin Yi, he would have challenged Lin Yi a long time ago. And now, although he could not find Lin Yi, Lin Yi's little brother, Xiao Hongcai, had taken the initiative to come to him. Ma Dongqiang, of course, would not be polite. F***CK your mother's bullsh**T. There are only two people who can be praised by Pavilion Master Shangwan. One is Ramjia, and the other is me, Boss Lin Yi. Trash like you is not qualified at all. How dare you say that Pavilion Master Shangwan made a mistake? Humph, you're just lying to yourself. Although Qiao Hongkai was imprisoned and unable to move, the sun would rise from the west if he wanted to make him cower. What did you say? Ma Dongxiang, who was originally proud and arrogant, immediately darkened his face when he heard this. He thought that he was far above Lin Yi in all aspects, but until now, there was still no strength to support Lin Yi's argument. The reason was because of Shanghai Tianhua. In the beginning, when he obtained Shanghai Tianhua's approval, Lin Yi was naturally regarded as the second Ramjia. Ma Dongxiang, even if he was above Lin Yi in all aspects, even if he was invincible in the inter-sect competition, he still could not obtain Shanghai Tianhua's approval. This was an undeniable sore point. It was the only place where he was inferior to Lin Yi, and it was also the most taboo topic for him. Now that Qiao Hongkai said this in front of him, it was no less than exposing his scars in front of everyone. After being stepped on by him, he still dared to be so arrogant. Did he really think that Ma Dongxiang did not dare to kill him? I said that the grapes are sour because you can't eat them. What? Did I hit a sore spot just like that? Ha 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 ha. Qiao Hongkai laughed incessantly, as if he did not care about Ma Dongxiang at all. Even if he was under someone's control now, he could still laugh and scold as he wished. Lu Bianren, senior brother Kubai, and the others, seeing this, secretly applauded Qiao Hongcai's unyielding spirit. At the same time, they could not help but break out in a cold sweat for him. Now that Qiao Hongcai's life was in Ma Dongxiang's hands, if Ma Dongxiang went crazy, they would not be able to save him in time. The consequences would be unimaginable. Indeed, the three great pavilions had strict rules for fights between disciples. Unless it was a public battle, killing was absolutely not allowed. Violators would be severely punished. If Ma Dongxiang really killed Qiao Hongkai in a rage, he would definitely have to pay a heavy price. However, he was now a genius that the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion unanimously valued. Even if the price he had to pay was not small, it would not be to the point where it was unacceptable. Do you really think that I don't dare to kill you? A malevolent expression flashed across Ma Dongxiang's face. His eyes turned cold, and he suddenly stepped on Qiao Hongcai's hand. This hand had been pointed at him since he entered the room. Anyone who dared to challenge his bottom line should not think about having a good ending. Crack! The scalp-numbing sound of bones breaking rang out. Qiao Hongcai's face suddenly paled, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. Cold sweat poured down like rain, but he did not make a sound from beginning to end. The expressions of Lu Bianren and the others immediately changed. They could not help but want to attack Ma Dongxiang. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4572. Everyone could tell that Qiao Hongkai had broken at least 2 fingers, maybe even more. It's just a few fingers. This is just a small punishment for you. Who asked you to be so arrogant and disrespectful to me, the newcomer king? Ha 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 ha. Ma Dongxiang laughed unscrupulously as he continued to crush Qiao Hongcai's fingers with his foot. He did not use any true qi. He wanted to use this kind of ordinary method to torture Qiao Hongkai bit by bit until he collapsed. However, Qiao Hongcai's performance greatly disappointed him. No matter how much unbearable pain he felt from his finger, this guy didn't even make a sound. He just stared coldly at Ma Duo. Lu Bianren and the others instantly spread out and surrounded Ma Dongxiang. If it was not for the fact that Qiao Hongkai was being stepped on by him, they would definitely have made a move. As people of Lin Yi's faction, it could be said that they were bound together for good or bad. They would not stand by and watch Qiao Hongkai be killed. Oh, I didn't expect you to be a tough guy. Interesting. Ma Dang didn't pay any attention to Lu Bianren and the others who were glaring at him. He looked at Qiao Hongkai like a cat playing with a mouse and said with great interest, I'm actually not that murderous. If you know what's good for you, lower your head and admit your mistake, and sincerely call me Grandpa a few times. Maybe I'll be happy and spare your little life. That way, people won't say that I didn't give a chance to my fellow disciples. How about it? I'll count to 3. If you miss this opportunity, don't blame me. Call you Grandpa? What? You sound like you're ready to join our Chow family? Ha 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 ha. Unfortunately, our Chow family's threshold is too high. We only accept people and not dogs. I'm afraid you won't have this chance. Xiao Honkai couldn't stop laughing. He didn't take the other party's threat to heart at all. It would be strange if he was afraid of Ma Dongshan's threat. 1. Ma Daoqiang's expression turned cold, and he used even more strength to stomp on the ground. He couldn't be bothered to argue with Xiao Honkai, and immediately started counting. Lu Bianren and the rest felt their hearts clench. Killing intent erupted from their bodies. If they were to allow Xiao Honkai to die in the hands of the other party right under their noses, how would they be able to face Lin Yi in the future? At this moment, everyone only had the same thought in their minds. What bullsh *T Rookie King? As long as he dared to kill Xiao Honkai, even if he had to risk being severely punished by Blue Cloud Pavilion, he had to kill this bastard on the spot. 2. Ma Daoqiang continued counting. At the same time, he shot a disdainful glance at the murderous crowd. The trace of mockery in his eyes was obvious. Strictly speaking, the strength of the few present was not weak among the disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion. However, if they wanted to go against Ma Daoqiang with this little bit of strength, they were simply daydreaming. If these people dared to attack him, he wouldn't mind killing a few more people today. In for a penny, in for a pound, in for a pound. He might as well wipe out everyone in Lin Yi's faction. Let's see who still dares to say that he was inferior to Lin Yi. 3. I've already counted for you. If you want to kill me, hurry up and do it. Don't dawdle here. You're annoying me. Xiao Honkai curled his lips in disdain. Right now, he was being stepped on by the other party. He didn't have the ability to resist. If it was someone else, they might really be frightened by Ma Daoqiang. Unfortunately, he, Xiao Honkai, had never known how the word death was written. What was there to be afraid of? You're really not afraid of death? Then I'll fulfill your wish. The killing intent in Ma Daoqiang's eyes intensified. At this moment, Xiao Hongsai's life was in his hands. Xiao Hongsai's life or death was completely in his hands. He didn't even need to move his finger. He could just send a wisp of true qi to ensure that Xiao Honkai would die. Don't you dare. The one who spoke was not Xiao Honkai. It was Lu Bianren, senior brother Ku Bai, Xiao Ran, and Li Jingming. No matter how cautious they were, since things had come to this, they had no choice but to make a move. They couldn't just watch as Xiao Honkai was killed by Ma Daoqiang. If they couldn't stop him, they could only choose to bury Ma Daoqiang with him and avenge Xiao Honkai. Otherwise, how would they have the face to face Lin Yi? The killing intent on the four of them soared, and they launched a surprise attack from 4 different directions. You're just a chicken and a stray dog. How dare you act so presumptuously in front of me? Ma Daoqiang didn't even look at the 4 of them. He looked at Xiao Honkai beneath his feet, and his gaze grew even more ferocious. It was as if Lu Bianren and the other 3 were completely beneath his notice. They weren't even worth a second glance. Seeing Ma Daoqiang's fearless attitude, Lu Bianren and the other 3 were not happy. Instead, they were worried. Without hesitation, they used their strongest killing moves. Although it was a good thing for the 4 of them to underestimate their enemy, was it really so? What happened next explained why Ma Daoqiang was so dismissive towards them. There was no other reason. The difference in their strength was too great. They weren't even on the same level. Ma Daoqiang used the same method he used against Xiao Honkai. For cracks suddenly appeared beneath Ma Daoqiang's feet, and he appeared beneath Lu Bianren and the other 3 at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. However, this time, he didn't try to trap the 4 of them. Instead, a sharp spike shot out from the crack. The 4 of them didn't even have the chance to react. Speed was the only thing that couldn't be broken. However, the 4 sharp spikes that were used against Lu Bianren and the other 3 were formed from extremely concentrated vital energy. At the same time, they were terrifyingly hard and frighteningly fast. This was a method that was made purely for killing people. Not only was it extremely hidden and sudden, it was also extremely effective. Without exception, Lu Bianren and the other 3 were hit by the sharp spikes at the same time. Although they didn't manage to dodge in time, Lu Bianren, Xiao Ran, and Li Jingming were not ordinary people. Although their strength was far inferior to their opponents, Their reactions were fast. When they were hit by the spikes, they barely managed to avoid being hit in the vitals. However, a large piece of flesh was scraped off their bodies at the same time. Fresh blood dripped from their bodies. It was a ghastly sight. In contrast, senior brother Xiao Chong, who was much less talented, was not so lucky. Accompanied by a hoarse scream, the sharp spike pierced through his right thigh without any resistance. His whole body was brought up, blood splattered everywhere as he hung upside down in the air. Because of the intense pain, he struggled. Because of the struggle, the spike pierced deeper and deeper, causing more and more pain. Everyone was so shocked by this scene that they couldn't move. Even the injuries on their bodies were forgotten. The spike was sharp at the top and wide at the bottom. If senior brother Xiao Chong continued to struggle, the wound on his thigh would only get bigger and bigger. In the end, his entire right leg would be broken. Chapter 45-73. From Xiao Hongsai's point of view, it didn't matter if he died, but if he killed senior brother Kuqian and the others because of him, even if he could live past today, he would live in the shadow of guilt for the rest of his life. Crack! Xiao Hongsai's eyes were bloodshot, and he bit down on Ma Daoqiang's foot like a madman. Even if he knew that his opponent was wearing a cowhide boot, even if he knew that it wouldn't hurt him at all, he didn't care. This was the only counterattack he could make right now. As long as he could make his opponent feel pain, it would be enough. If he could pierce through the cowhide boot and bite off half of his opponent's foot before he died, it would be worth it. Lu Bianren, Xiao Ran, and Li Jingming couldn't care about anything else. They hurriedly endured the pain and charged towards their senior brother Kubai, and they rushed to support him before his entire right leg was broken. Otherwise, once his leg was completely broken, even if he could live past today, he would become a complete cripple in the future, and his life would be worse than death. Ha 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 ha. So this is Lin Yi's underling? Such a weak mob. It seems that if it's not his eyesight that's wrong, then it's his own problem. Birds of a feather flock together. After all, Ma Daoqiang glanced sideways at everyone's pathetic state and didn't choose to kill them immediately. Instead, he held his stomach and laughed wildly. Ever since he entered the welcoming pavilion for a year, Lin Yi's various legendary deeds had almost worn his ears out. If it wasn't for Lin Yi's absence, he would have long gone to find Lin Yi to determine who was the strongest newcomer king. But since he couldn't find the main culprit, it wasn't a bad idea to find Lin Yi's underlings to vent his anger. He had wanted to do something like this for a long time, but there hadn't been a suitable opportunity. Now that these people had taken the initiative to deliver themselves to his door, it couldn't be any better. Facing everyone's eyes that were spitting fire, as if they wanted to skin him alive, Ma Daoqiang didn't care at all. Instead, he laughed with great interest and said, "Don't be so nervous. I've said it before, although I have killed many people, my killing intent isn't that strong. Don't worry, I'm in a good mood today, so I won't kill you. However, you can escape death, but you can't escape punishment. I'm going to torture all of you until you're crippled. When that bullshit Linny comes back, I'll have a good look at his expression." Huh. Everyone was so angry that they gnashed their teeth. They were outnumbered, but there was nothing they could do when facing this person. Just now, they had clearly distinguished the difference in strength between them. Even if there were twice as many of them, they still wouldn't be a match for Ma Daoguang, let alone the few of them. Among them, Lu Bianren's strength was the strongest. However, even he wasn't a match for his opponent. As for Xiao Ran and the other Foundation establishment stage experts, they couldn't even withstand a single blow. This was because their opponent, Ma Daofa, was an original infant stage expert. A newcomer to the Blue Cloud Pavilion, who had only joined the welcoming pavilion for a year, was actually a nascent soul expert. This kind of thing could be said to subvert everyone's view of cultivation in life, but this was the truth. Not long ago, during the inner court competition, it was confirmed in front of everyone. It was absolutely true. If not for this, Ma Daofa wouldn't have been able to sweep through the inner court competition that was filled with experts. Even in the end, when he faced a golden core perfected expert from the Soaring Sky Pavilion, it was still an easy kill. As an original infant stage expert, his strength was undoubtedly shown. It was said that at that time, Everyone in the venue was shocked to the point of being dumbfounded. For the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, not a single person said a word. Although once one reached the original infant stage, they wouldn't be allowed to participate in the inner court competition. However, this was only for the official disciples of the inner court. Ma Daofa was only a newcomer at that time, so naturally, he wasn't included. As the bitter senior brother and Xiao Ran sucked in a breath of cold air while enduring the intense pain, they exchanged glances with each other. Their eyes were filled with shock and helplessness. To them, the scene before them was not unfamiliar at all because they had already experienced it many times. Among the people present, since Liu Bianren returned from the South Continent Sea, other than reporting to the higher-ups, he was in closed-door cultivation and rarely had any contact with the outside world. Li Zhengming and Xiao Hongkai were both in the outer pavilion. They were also diligent in cultivation and rarely asked about the outside world. Only the two of them had the most contact with Ma Daofa, and only they truly knew how terrifying his strength was. However, in fact, when Ma Daofa first joined the welcoming pavilion, apart from being a little stubborn, he wasn't much different from the other newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. His initial strength was only at the heaven stage perfected, and they usually didn't see him make any special moves. However, after that, they didn't know what happened. But the feeling this guy gave them was that his strength had suddenly skyrocketed in a short period of time. From the original unknown heaven stage perfected, he suddenly became a high and mighty golden core perfected expert. After that, he even became an expert of the nascent soul stage. This kind of thing was completely unseen and unheard of. One must know that in the eyes of everyone, Lin Yi was already a freak who leveled up so fast that it made people's hair stand on end. Even so, he still advanced step by step. Even if everyone was shocked, they could still accept it in the end. At most, they would say that this was the gap between a genius and an ordinary person. However, Ma Daofa was different. From the heaven stage perfected to the high and mighty nascent soul stage, the whole process only took a short period of time. It could be said that there were no signs at all. It was still acceptable to rise 3 levels in a night, but from the heaven stage perfected to the nascent soul stage, this covered 3 big realms. This wasn't a matter of ancestral graves emitting green smoke. This was simply a mushroom cloud exploding. Any seemingly unreasonable thing must have a reasonable explanation behind it. After senior brother Ku Bai and Xiao Ran were shocked by this scene, they soon found a reasonable explanation like others. That was, from the beginning, Ma Daofa was a master of the nascent soul stage. But he had been hiding his strength for some reason. This was a reasonable explanation recognized by the public, and Ma Daofa himself was non-committal about it. He didn't admit it, but he also didn't deny it, so it was regarded as a tacit agreement. If Ma Daofa didn't say it himself, there was no real explanation for this matter. Everyone speculated about this guy's motive for hiding his strength, but in the end, it was just speculation. However, on the night Ma Daofa changed from the heaven stage perfected to the nascent soul stage, senior brother Ku Bai and Xiao Ran found an extremely unexpected oddity. In just one night, the Soaring Sky Pavilion, Profound Secrets Pavilion, and Clear Cloud Pavilion, the 3 great pavilions on the northern island, actually lost a number of disciples at the same time. The total number of people who died was more than 15. Moreover, each and every one of them was not weak, and some of them were even core disciples who were regarded as the hope of entering the inner court. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4574. Although there was no definite connection between these 2 incidents on the surface, because the time of occurrence was too close, any normal person would feel that there were many doubts. Therefore, after senior brother Ku Bai and Xiao Ran were puzzled, they immediately reported the situation of Ma Dafu to the Law Enforcement Hall and let the masters of the Law Enforcement Hall personally intervene in the investigation. The Law Enforcement Hall acted very quickly. Almost as soon as they received the report, they took Ma Dafu away for investigation. However, unexpectedly, this investigation lasted for half a month, but there was no specific result. In the end, the Law Enforcement Hall Master Ramjia made the final decision. He said that the 15 disciples of the 3 pavilions who died that night all died of a unique emergency that had never been seen before. The source of the emergency needed to be further confirmed with the Dan Hall. However, all of this had nothing to do with Madafu. Madafu was just hiding his strength. Other than that, there was no violation of the rules. This was the final conclusion of Ramjia, so naturally no one would question it. Even though senior brother Ku Bai and Xiao Ran still felt a little strange, they did not dare to question it. Therefore, after Madafu was locked up in the law enforcement hall for half a month, he finally left unscathed. This matter was over, but since then, Madafu changed his previous attitude of obscurity and began to become arrogant and do whatever he wanted. As an unprecedented nascent soul stage newcomer, it was simply a pipe dream for senior brother Ku Bai and Xiao Ran to want to control him with the strength of the foundation establishment stage. One was the third pavilion master of the welcoming pavilion, and the other was the great senior brother who was in charge of the newcomer. Not only could they not control Madafu, the newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, but because of the previous report, they were hated by Madafu. They were repeatedly bullied by Madafu to the point that they could not step down in public. It could be said that they were humiliated. The other higher-ups of the welcoming pavilion, including the pavilion master Hu Yun, all looked on coldly and did not care. Even the higher-ups of the welcome pavilion had such an attitude. Needless to say, the Blue Cloud Pavilion's situation was even worse. Whether it was senior brother Bitter or Xiao Ran, their only backer was Lin Yi. Now that Lin Yi wasn't around, it could be said that they didn't even have one person to rely on within the Blue Cloud Pavilion. Not only did the higher-ups of the Blue Cloud Pavilion not stand up for them, they even praised them and stood against them. With such a momentum, he would undoubtedly become the king of the newcomers, especially after he skipped the Outer Sanctum competition like Lin Yi did in the past and directly displayed his splendor in the Inner Sanctum competition. It was said that the upper echelons of Blue Cloud Pavilion had unanimously recognized Ma Duanqiang as their future hope, and had even decided on him as the successor of Blue Cloud Pavilion. In terms of strength, the opponent was a nascent soul stage expert. In terms of status, the opponent was the successor of Blue Cloud Pavilion. No matter which one it was, the people present were far from being able to contend against Ma Duanqiang. It was obvious that they had fallen into a completely one-sided oppressive situation. Lu Bianren and the others had no way to deal with it and could only passively take the beating. Looking at your posture, it seems that you have accepted your fate, right? Ma Duanqiang glanced at the crowd and sneered. How boring. I thought that you would have a bit of backbone, but I didn't expect you to be so tactful. Or do you think that I will let you go just like that? Ha 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 ha, don't be too naive. Since I said that I will cripple all of you today, then I will absolutely not give you any discount. Let's just start with the one under my foot. As soon as he said that, Ma Duanqiang exerted a bit of force on his foot, and the crowd immediately heard the familiar yet numbing sound of bones breaking. The hand that Xiao Hongkai had been stepped on had already lost all its fingers. It was very likely that there wasn't even a single finger left. Feeling the inhuman pain that shot straight up to his head, Xiao Hongcai's face instantly turned red, and the veins on his body bulged violently. However, he clenched his teeth tightly and didn't make a sound. His pair of bloodshot eyes stared fiercely at Ma Duanqiang as he spat out each word through gritted teeth. You will pay the price. You will definitely pay the price. If you don't kill me today, in the future, I will return it to you 1,000 times over. I'm so scared. Ma Duanqiang purposely pretended to be afraid, and then laughed out loud. Looks like I said something wrong just now. I shouldn't have said that you are boring. I should have said that you are very interesting. Today, I will not kill you. No matter how much you try to provoke me, it will be useless. But I will destroy your meridians one by one. I want to see how you bunch of useless people plan to seek revenge on me in the future. Ha 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 ha. Right at that moment, Xiao Ran and Li Jingming, who were not far away, suddenly attacked at the same time. Their speed instantly increased to the maximum, and it was impossible to tell that they had been seriously injured by the earth spike earlier. Once a cultivator's meridians were destroyed, they would become completely useless. They would rather fight to the death than watch Xiao Hongkai become a useless person, and they were even more unwilling to become a useless person themselves. Seeking death. Ma Duanqiang's eyes were filled with killing intent. Although he had said that he didn't want to kill anyone, but if these lowly ants were bent on seeking death, then he would not be merciful. It was just killing a few insignificant outer court disciples, and in his eyes, it was not even worth a fart. That earth spike just now was just a show of strength. Once he really wanted to kill, not a single person here would be able to escape. And now, he was planning to start a massacre. With a single thought, Ma Duanqiang was about to unleash his killing technique. Xiao Ran and Li Zhengming's speed was already extremely fast in the eyes of a normal person, but in the eyes of an original infant stage expert like him, they were as slow as a turtle crawling, weak to the point of being unable to withstand a single blow. With the sudden appearance of killing intent, Xiao Ran and Li Zhengming's hearts were filled with alarm. However, the two of them did not stop their movements and continued to advance forward. How could a person not be stabbed in the Jianghu? Even if they were to die, what was there to fear? Lu Bianren, senior brother Ku Bai, and Xiao Hongcai's eyes were bloodshot when they saw this scene. Seeing that the two of them were about to be the first to die, a cool breeze suddenly swept across the field, and without any warning, a figure suddenly appeared. He said indifferently, "Killing is but a small matter. You have no enmity with them. Why do you want to cause trouble for yourself, junior brother Ma?" Everyone was stunned. Even the unbridled Ma Duanqiang couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he saw this person's appearance. This person was the eldest senior brother who managed the inner court of Blue Cloud Pavilion, Jiamu Fan. With Ma Duanqiang's original infant stage strength, he could treat anyone here as if they were grass. He could kill or cripple them as he pleased. But when facing this Jiamu Fan, even he had to restrain himself. Not only was this because Jiamu Fan was the eldest senior brother who managed the inner court, but also because Jiamu Fan also had the strength of an original infant stage and was even stronger than him. "Senior brother Jia, these people gathered in my courtyard without permission. I don't know what they are plotting. Shouldn't you punish them?" Ma Duanqiang was stunned for a moment, then returned to normal, and looked at Lu Bianren and the others with a cold smile. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4575. Jiamu Fan swept his gaze across the crowd and saw that no one was uninjured, especially senior brother Ku Bai and Xiao Hongcai. He furrowed his brows and said, "Apart from a duel, it's strictly forbidden for fellow disciples to kill each other. This is the iron rule of the three great pavilions, and no one can defy it. Junior brother Ma, although you haven't been in the sect for long, I hope you'll keep this in mind. Otherwise, it won't be a good thing for you, or the entire Blue Cloud Pavilion. Moreover, they've already paid the price. Going too far is as bad as falling short. I advise you to stop, junior brother Ma." "Fine. Very well. Since senior brother Jia has spoken, I will give you face and let these reckless ants go for now. However, if they fall into my hands again next time, don't blame me for not showing any mercy," said Jiaxiu coldly. Ma Daoqiang stared deeply at Jiamu Fan, then slowly removed his foot from Qiao Hongcai's hand with a sinister smile. "All right, remember to arrange a duel in advance next time." Gasp. Everyone looked at Qiao Hongcai's hand, which had been trampled beyond recognition, and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Even though they had seen many battles, they had never known that a hand could be trampled into such a bloody mess. At this moment, they couldn't even see the outline of a hand. Xiao Hongcai hadn't made a single sound from beginning to end. This fellow was truly unimaginably unyielding. Xiao Ran and Li Zhengming, who were the closest to him, exchanged glances. While guarding against Ma Daoqiang's every move, they hurriedly rescued Xiao Hongcai from the human-shaped pit. Then, they slowly retreated to Lu Bianren and senior brother Ku Bai's side. They were bound by a common enemy. "The few of you should leave. From today onwards, this place belongs to junior brother Ma. Don't come here again, lest you bring trouble upon yourself," Jiamu Fan said slowly to the crowd. "What? This is junior brother Lin's residence? How can he give it to someone else?" Lu Bianren and the rest were shocked. They thought Ma Daoqiang was just looking for trouble. They didn't expect it to be true. "Junior brother Lin? You mean that bullsh asterisk T Lin E? Ha 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 ha. After disappearing for more than a year, I don't even know if he's dead or alive. How could he have the cheek to occupy the toilet without taking a shit?" This is the best residence in the inner sect of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Since I've seen it, it's mine. Could it be that you still dare to have any objections? Ma Daoqiang laughed complacently. Seeing that Lu Bianren and the others were boiling with rage, Jia Mufan couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He signaled with his eyes to stop them and said, "There's an inside story to this matter. I'll explain it clearly to you. You'd better follow me out first." Jia Mufan walked up to Lu Bianren's group and nodded slightly at Lu Bianren. Then, he took the lead and walked out the door. Everyone's gazes landed on Lu Bianren. Now that Linny wasn't here, Lu Bianren was the leader of the group. He could leave or stay as he pleased. If the leader had been Xiao Hongkai, he would definitely have fought to the death today. He would not have hesitated even if he had to die here. However, Lu Bianren was different. He was not so hot-tempered. He was more considerate of the bigger picture. Where there's life, there's hope. It wasn't wise to stay here knowing that they couldn't win. Moreover, if they did that, even Jia Mufan, the eldest senior brother who came to mediate the situation, would be offended. If he offended them, the consequences would be unimaginable. All right, let's go. Lu Bianren took a deep breath and took the lead to follow Jia Mufan. Although the others were unwilling, they knew that this was the best choice. They glared at Ma Daoqiang before leaving. Haha, what a bunch of cowards. Ma Daoqiang laughed smugly at the back. Oh, right. I forgot to tell you that I'm about to become the second senior brother of Blue Cloud Pavilion's inner sect manager. Although I don't take in useless people, I'll leave a few positions for you since you're the former newcomer king's underlings. If you know what's good for you, come and join me. Otherwise, you won't be so lucky next time. Lu Bianren and the others looked at each other. They couldn't be bothered to argue with this bastard. They sneered in their hearts. Next time? Humph. The next time will be the time for you to pay with your blood. The group walked out of the main door with a heavy atmosphere. Lu Bianren suddenly stopped and said to Jia Mufan, "Senior brother Jia, can you tell us what's going on now? How did junior brother Lin's residents become that bastards?" Jia Mufan stopped and glanced at everyone's faces. He sighed and said, "Actually, junior brother Ma had already taken a liking to this place on the second day after the inner disciple competition ended. He came to me to ask for it, but I rejected him on the spot because it's junior brother Lin's place." What happened after that? Lu Bianren and the others frowned. Since then, he came to me a few more times. But I made excuses every time. I might as well tell you the truth. Although I'm not very familiar with junior brother Lin and we can't be considered friends, he's someone who's valued by both Pavilion Master Shangguan and Pavilion Master Yu. As the eldest senior brother who manages the inner sect, why would I offend junior brother Lin for this kind of thing? Jia Mufan said sincerely. Everyone nodded successively, and the gazes they shot at Jia Mufan had obviously become much friendlier. They were able to discern that he was speaking the truth. Moreover, with his identity as the eldest senior brother that managed the inner court, it was extremely difficult for him to be willing to speak such heartfelt words to them. Needless to say, this fellow really had a way of handling matters. If that's the case, how did it still fall into his hands? Lu Bianren and the others looked at each other. Jia Mufan was the one who had the power to allocate the cave residences for the inner sect disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion. If he rejected it, would Ma Xingyang dare to snatch it from him without a valid reason? You might not know this, but junior brother Ma's position in the inner sect of Blue Cloud Pavilion is no longer lower than mine. Many of the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion think highly of him. He's determined to win this time. He found a few pavilion elders to support him and forcefully put the residents under his name in the Elders' Council of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Therefore, there's nothing I can do. Jia Mufan shrugged helplessly. Damn it, this is too much. Everyone was filled with righteous indignation. If Linny was still here, they believed that even the elders of Blue Cloud Pavilion would not dare to do such a thing. After all, offending Lin Yi was equivalent to slapping Shanghai Tianhua in the face. Even Yu Zhanyang, the pavilion master of Blue Cloud Pavilion, would not dare to do such a thing, let alone the elders. Chapter 4576. Not to mention, without Lin Yi's permission, even if Shangguan Tianhua knew about it, he wouldn't be able to interfere. After all, this was Clear Cloud Pavilion's internal affairs. Although this powerful soaring sky pavilion lord didn't really care about public opinion, he rarely broke the rules, and he wouldn't interfere with other pavilions' trivial matters. This is the decision of the internal elders of Blue Cloud Pavilion. I can only act according to the rules. I originally planned to delay the delivery to 3 days later, which is just the right time to communicate with the few of you. However, I did not expect to receive a message from Junior Brother Ma right after I received the order from the higher-ups, saying that he was already here to receive it. That's why I rushed over. I did not expect to see you guys like this. Sigh. Jia Mufan let out a long sigh and patted Lu Bianren's shoulder. He said to the crowd with a face full of shame, "It was my thoughtlessness that caused you guys to suffer. Senior Brother Jia, you don't have to blame yourself. What happened today is between us and Ma Daoqiang. It has nothing to do with you. We will remember your kindness," Lu Bianren said immediately. The others nodded in unison. What happened today had already caused them to fight to the death with Ma Daoqiang. There was no possibility of reconciliation from now on. No matter what, it's because I came late that caused you guys to suffer. It just so happens that I have a good relationship with the person in charge of medicine in the pill hall. I will bring you guys to treat your injuries. I guarantee that there will not be any sequelae, Jia Mufan took the initiative to say. Lu Bianren looked at Xiao Hongkai and Senior Brother Ku Bai. His injuries were still manageable. As long as they applied some good medicine, they would recover quickly without going to the pill hall. However, these two were different. Xiao Hongcai's hand was already beyond recognition, and Senior Brother Ku Bai's right leg was almost broken. If they did not receive treatment as soon as possible, there would be big problems. In that case, thank you for your kindness, Senior Brother Jia. Lu Bianren did not decline. Treating his injuries was the most important thing now. Owing a favor for this was not a big deal. He just had to find an opportunity to return it in the future. Don't mention it. This is my duty as a senior brother. There's no need to thank me. Jia Mufan waved his hand. He immediately led everyone to the medical hall. As he walked, he asked, "Oh right, is there still no news from Junior Brother Lin?" "Not yet. Ever since I parted ways with him in the South Continent Sea, I haven't heard from him again." Lu Bianren and the others said gloomily. If Linny was here, how could he allow a clown like this to act as a spear? Even at the very least, he would be able to ensure everyone's safety, and they wouldn't end up in such a miserable state. Don't worry, Junior Brother Lin. You must have faith in Junior Brother Lin. He'll come back safely. Jia Mufan smiled as he consoled her. That's right, Junior Brother Lin will definitely be safe. Definitely. Lu Bianren nodded heavily. Hearing the two of them say so, the others finally felt a little better. Pausing, Lu Bianren suddenly thought of something and asked Jia Mufan, "Senior Brother Jia, Junior Brother Lin and Junior Sister Huang received a mission to capture the evil cultivator, Wu Baoliang. News of Wu Baoliang being killed on the spot has already spread, so please take some time to cancel their mission." "Yes, this is my duty. Don't worry," Jia Mufan agreed readily without hesitation. "Thank you, Senior Brother Jia." Lu Bianren and the others nodded gratefully. They thought to themselves, thank goodness this inner-sect steward is easy to talk to. Otherwise, not only would they not be able to pass today, they might even have to go through a lot of trouble to cancel the mission. If this kind of mission was left hanging and not canceled, it would greatly affect the future missions and a series of other matters. It might even affect Lin Yi's long-term development in Blue Cloud Pavilion. After all, strictly speaking, this was a stain that was neither too big nor too small. He brought Lu Bianren and the others to the pill hall. With Jia Mufan's identity, he naturally received special treatment. After all, he was the Clear Cloud Pavilion's eldest senior brother who was in charge of the inner sanctum. He was destined to have a bright future ahead of him. Even though he came from the Clear Cloud Pavilion, no one dared to slight him. The Dan Hall immediately sent out the best doctors to treat everyone's injuries. As everyone only had some superficial injuries, apart from Xiao Hongkai and Senior Brother Ku Bai, who were more troublesome and needed to stay for treatment, Lu Bianren and the others could quickly return to their respective homes. However, Jia Mufan stayed with them from morning till night. It was rare for someone of his status to have such patience. If it was Lin Yi, it would not be strange for Jia Mufan to do this. However, the status of Lu Bianren and the others was worlds apart from him. Jamufan was still able to do this. It was evident that this person was not simple. Even if his nascent soul stage strength was disregarded, his temperament alone was destined to be extraordinary. He would definitely achieve great things in the future. Thank you, Senior Brother Jia, for today's matter. We will engrave it in our hearts and never dare to forget it. Lu Bianren brought Xiao Ran and Li Jingming with him, and the three of them bowed deeply to Jia Mufan. You're too polite. It's nothing. It's not worth mentioning. Jia Mufan smiled. Before he left, he said, there's one thing I hope you'll bear in mind. Don't make unnecessary sacrifices. Before Junior Brother Lin returns, don't provoke Junior Brother Ma. With his current status, if he really wants to kill you, to be honest, it would be in vain. That's all I have to say. Take care. The three of them looked at Jia Mufan's receding figure in silence. After a moment of silence, Xiaoran suddenly asked, Senior Brother Lu, do you think there's a deeper meaning behind Senior Brother Jia helping us so much? I also think it's a little strange. Although Senior Brother Jia has always been smooth and slick, he's still the eldest senior brother in charge of the inner sect. It's fine that he helped us out just now, but he actually personally sent us to the pill hall to treat our injuries. To be honest, even I didn't expect this. Lu Bianren shook his head in confusion. Every action of a big shot must have a deeper meaning, and Jia Mufan was undoubtedly a big shot. There must be a reason for his actions. It's just that everyone couldn't see through it for the time being. In my opinion, Senior Brother Jia has a big plan. He's really someone with a long-term vision. Today, I've learned something new. Li Zhengming said thoughtfully. Oh? Why do you say that? Zhengming, tell us quickly. Lu Bianren and Xiao Ran were stunned and asked hurriedly. From today's incident, although Senior Brother Jia is smooth and slick and doesn't seem to have offended Ma Daoqiang, I'm afraid he's already made a decision based on how he protected us and especially personally sent us to the pill hall, Li Jingming said slowly. Choice? You mean? Lu Bianren and Xiao Ran fell into deep thought at the same time. Even though the murderous aura was densely packed in the middle layer, the murderous aura of the five elements was not a threat to it at all. Instead, the murderous aura of the five elements scared it away. Of course I can. However, even if I go up, it will be of no use to you. The five evils dragon shook its head and said, What do you mean? Lin Yi was confused. Right now, he needed even stronger murderous aura of the five elements to aid in his cultivation. This didn't even require him to go up to the middle layer. All he had to do was fly up a little bit. How could it be of no use to him? Roar, roar. Even if I explain it to you like this, you won't understand. You'll understand when you go up. As soon as the five evils dragon finished speaking, it flapped its wings and flew up a little bit. Then, it stopped. Although it hadn't reached the middle layer, the murderous aura of the five elements around it was much stronger and more numerous than before. Lin Yi was quite satisfied. However, just as he was about to start cultivating, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. He couldn't help but cry out in surprise. How could this be? Before this, all the murderous auras of the five elements that Lin Yi had encountered, regardless of whether they were strong or weak, were single-minded. Basically, as long as they sensed Lin Yi's aura, and as long as Lin Yi didn't use his primary energy to cover his body, they would immediately attack. Unless Lin Yi escaped or the murderous aura of the five elements gradually dissipated in the process, they would definitely not stop until one of them died. Chapter 4578. However, when the dragon of five evils brought him up, they all fled in all directions. Even the five elements killing aura in the distance automatically avoided them and did not attack him. Cent Pound, the five elements killing aura is also intelligent. Although they are not afraid of you, they are afraid of me. So, they automatically escaped. The dragon of five evils laughed. But before, they attacked me. Lin Yi could not help but feel strange. That's because they're too weak, so they don't have enough intelligence. Basically, they're like brainless fools. However, this five elements killing aura is different. The stronger the pressure, the stronger their intelligence, and the more they know what's good for them. After sensing my presence, they naturally avoided me. As for me, I couldn't completely hide my presence here, so I avoided you as well, the 5 elements killing aura explained. So you're saying that the weaker 5-element auras were too weak? They didn't dare to attack you, but they dared to attack me? Linny said, understanding what was going on. Yes, that's what I mean. The dragon of 5 evils nodded. This is really… Linny was speechless. The 5 elements killing aura was not a living thing, but it had a certain degree of intelligence. Previously, he thought it was very strange and eye-opening, but now, he could only smile bitterly. The 5 elements killing aura did not need to reproduce. Why did they need such a strong intelligence? With the help of the dragon of 5 evils, Lin Yi thought he could completely use the 5 elements killing aura. He thought he could simply cultivate in seclusion here for a few years. If he took a few gathering nascent golden pills, he might be able to reach the peak of the nascent soul realm. Now, everything was just like the moon in the mirror. It didn't matter how strong the 5 elements were here, or how strong the pressure was, it was useless to him if they didn't attack him at all. If only he could fly, he wouldn't need the dragon to carry him. Unfortunately, this was purely an extravagant hope. What now? Do we still go to that place to cultivate? The dragon of 5 evils asked. Forget it, let's go down first. Linny sighed. Although the effect of cultivation in that place was better than usual, it was not as obvious as before. This feeling was like a person who was used to riding in a rocket had suddenly become an airship. He could not help but feel dull and somewhat disappointed. All right then. The dragon of 5 evils nodded and lowered its body to the ground. It had been cultivating with Lin Yi for 3 whole months, and even it was beginning to feel bored. He returned to the ground. Lin Yi's face was gloomy as he sighed helplessly. I can't get out, I can't cultivate, and there's nothing to do in this place. It's really a pain in the ass. He could clearly see the incomparably powerful 5 elemental killing chi when he raised his head, but because he couldn't fly, he couldn't use it to cultivate. This feeling of guarding a treasure mountain without being able to do anything really made him speechless. Before he encountered the 5 diabolical dragons, even if he couldn't cultivate, he could at least explore this place. However, now that he knew that this was the nest of the 5 poison dragon and the dragon of 5 evils, there was naturally no need to explore this place anymore. Not to mention the fact that he couldn't find anything good. Even if he was lucky enough to come across something, Lin Yi would not be able to just take it for himself. After all, in theory, the owner of this place was the dragon of 5 evils. Everything in this underground space belonged to it. If it was another spirit beast, Lin Yi naturally wouldn't feel any guilt snatching it. However, he was an old friend of the dragon of 5 evils. Lin Yi never had the habit of snatching treasures from his friends. Moreover, the dragon of 5 evils had specially accompanied him to cultivate for so long. If he still wanted to take something from it, he would be too inhumane. Therefore, to avoid embarrassment, Lin Yi simply gave up on the idea of exploring around. Being trapped here without being able to do anything felt like being imprisoned. No matter who it was, they would feel frustrated and depressed. Even someone as calm as Lin Yi was no exception. At this moment, the dragon of 5 evils suddenly said, actually, that might not be the case. Could it be that you have a way to prevent the 5 elemental killing aura from escaping? Lin Yi's spirit was instantly lifted. If he could continue to cultivate smoothly, based on his previous progress, it wouldn't be long before he could reach the middle stage of the original infant stage. If his strength really reached that stage, Lin Yi would have enough confidence to face the West Mountain Elder. Although he wouldn't be able to face the Elder directly, at least he would have the ability to protect himself. He wouldn't be in such a precarious situation like before. Especially with the help of the ghostly thing, Lin Yi was confident that he would be able to escape. Perhaps even more. I didn't think about that. The 5 elemental killing aura is actually more sensitive than any human cultivator or spirit beast. If I completely conceal my presence, I might have a chance to deceive them. However, once I move, there's definitely no chance. The dragon of 5 evils shook its head. What do you mean by not necessarily? Lin Yi grinned in disappointment. I'm not necessarily talking about cultivation. I'm talking about whether or not you can get out. The dragon of five evils looked at Lin Yi's depressed expression and smiled. Get out? How? Lin Yi's eyes lit up and he asked hurriedly. Anyway, continuing to cultivate here wouldn't have much effect. At this time, if there was a way to get out, he wouldn't have any regrets. It had been almost a year and a half since he left the North Island. Such a long time had passed without him noticing. To be honest, he really missed his senior and junior brothers and was worried about whether they had encountered any trouble. Now you know that there are 2 entrances and exits in this place. You definitely don't have to try the one in the hinterland of the South Island. After all, you might have been blacklisted by the Spirit Beast clan. That place is too dangerous for you. However, I think you can try the one you came in before. After all, such a long time has passed. Maybe their spies have withdrawn, the dragon of five evils said after thinking for a while. Oh, right. Linny suddenly patted his head excitedly. He didn't think of this because he was closely involved in the situation. No matter how cautious and suspicious the Elder of West Mountain was, people always had limited patience. It was already ridiculous for the Elder of West Mountain to send people to guard the Swamp of Five Poisons, a place of certain death, for him to fall into such a place as the Swamp of Five Poisons. Now that more than half a year had passed, they should have given up long ago. After all, they didn't know that there was such a treasure land below, let alone that Lin Yi could avoid the attack of the 5 elemental killing aura. Chapter 4579. Is there any other way? Is there a third entrance and exit? Then why don't you tell me directly? Lin Yi hurriedly asked. To tell you the truth, there really is a third entrance and exit in this place, but I have never been to this entrance and exit. It's just that my master, the Five Poisons Flood Dragon, mentioned it before his death. It doesn't seem to have been there, and there is no exact information related to it, so I don't know what the situation outside this entrance and how dangerous it is. Unless you have to, I don't recommend you to take this risk. The Dragon of Five Evils shook its head. I see. That's equivalent to a complete gamble. It's really too risky. Lin Yi pondered for a moment and nodded. After all, this place was located under the South Island, so according to common sense, the third entrance and exit, like the other 2, was very likely to be in the South Island, or even in the hinterland of another South Island. If Lin Yi went out rashly, he would be walking into a trap, and the risk he had to take was not small at all. So I didn't tell you before, lest you go to die. How about it? I'm very kind, right? Roar. The Dragon of Five Evils laughed. Very kind. Then I'll go to the Five Poisons Swamp to have a look first. If there are still people guarding it, then even if it's risky, I can only give it a try. After Lin Yi said that, he immediately jumped on the back of the spirit bird. One man and one bird instantly soared into the sky, and almost in the blink of an eye, they came to the surface of the Five Poisons Swamp. Lin Yi's heart sank as he scanned the area with the goddamn thing's consciousness. This West Mountain Elder still hadn't removed his eyes? This was far beyond stubbornness. He was sick in the head. Lin Yi was about to go crazy at this moment, and he was full of dirty words. But in fact, he really blamed the West Mountain Elder wrongly this time. As he had speculated before, even if the West Mountain Elder was cautious and suspicious, he had already determined that he would die after such a long time. The reason why he didn't remove the spies was actually very simple. He had forgotten. Lin Yi was already dead. This was what the West Mountain Elder was thinking. As an evil cultivator, he naturally wouldn't care about a dead person. Thus, he naturally threw Lin Yi to the back of his mind. He even completely forgot about the spies that Long Kiba had planted in the Five Poison Swamp. If the dignified West Mountain Elder cared about these dragon boat escorts who couldn't even be considered as minions, then the sun would rise from the west. Since West Mountain's Elder Sect Master didn't say anything, Long Kiba naturally didn't dare to withdraw his people. To him, it was just a matter of losing 2 escorts. It didn't matter at all. It was even more impossible for him to bother the West Mountain Elder over such a small matter. To Long Kiba, as long as he didn't urge him to find some nascent soul female cultivator, everything would be fine. So what if he sent out a few escorts? As a result, the escorts under him became the unlucky ones. Even though they knew it was pointless, they could only come here on time and did not dare to slack off. The The minions were just unlucky. As for Lin Yi, the person involved, he was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. From the complaints of the two people above him, he already knew the cause and effect. He almost vomited blood on the spot. They were obviously negligent. In the end, he couldn't move because of a freak combination of factors. How could he explain this? Lin Yi forcibly restrained himself for a long time. Finally, he barely restrained the idea of killing the two spies. Don't look at the perfunctory attitude of these two people. But once they felt danger, they would immediately crush the sensing jade tablet. At that time, even if the West Mountain Elder had already forgotten about him, he would definitely remember this matter when he saw the jade tablet shatter. With Lin Yi's current strength at the peak of the early nascent soul stage, facing the West Mountain Elder, he didn't have much confidence in escaping unscathed. Even if he escaped back to the five-poisoned swamp and left the West Mountain Elder helpless, this would expose the key information that he could survive in the five-poisoned swamp. When the time came, the West Mountain Elder would definitely not rest until he was dead. It would be even more impossible for him to escape from here. This was a risk that Lin Yi couldn't take. So after weighing the pros and cons, he could only resentfully ride the spirit bird back down to the underground space. It seems that we can't get out from here. How about it? Do you want to try the third passage? Seeing Lin Yi's unlucky expression from afar, the five demons dragon didn't need to ask to know the result. Of course, otherwise we will be trapped here alive. I really have to give it to that old monster. Even an unintentional mistake can force me to be unable to move. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. If the West Mountain Elder hadn't forgotten about him at this time, then it might be possible to remove the spy after a period of time. But now that he had forgotten about it, he wouldn't take the initiative to think about it in the future. Long Kiba and the others wouldn't dare to bother him with such a trivial matter. It was very likely that even after 8 to 10 years, he would still be like this. There was no hope at all. The five demons dragon was stunned for a moment. After listening to Lin Yi's explanation, it suddenly laughed forward and back. It lay on the ground and madly slapped the ground with its claws. For a time, the earth shook. I say, can you at least restrain yourself a little? You don't have to show your schadenfreude so vividly, right? You're about to cause an earthquake. Lin Yi squinted his eyes and said speechlessly, if an earth-opening stage existence really let loose and destroyed, the entire space would probably collapse. Just the five demons' dragon smile alone caused cracks to appear. It really couldn't withstand its torment. Roar, 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 roar. This is the funniest joke I've heard in 2 years. You're really unlucky. It's too funny. The five demons' dragon was still laughing unscrupulously. It was obviously a dinosaur, but Lin Yi stared blankly at it laughing until tears came out of its eyes. In the past 2 years, you've only seen me, a human. You haven't even met a ghost. It would be strange if you could hear a joke. Lin Yi speechlessly cursed for a while. He waited for the five demons dragon to stop laughing, then urged it to lead the way to the third entrance. Although this space was vast and boundless, with the speed of the five fiends dragon, it could cover any distance in an instant. Although the spirit bird's speed was not as terrifying as the five fiends dragons, a nascent soul spirit bird's speed in the outside world was enough to make one's hair stand on end. After flying for a while, the five demons dragon suddenly landed in front of them. Lin Yi thought that they had reached their destination, so he hurriedly let the spirit bird land. However, he discovered that everything around him was the same as before. It didn't seem like there was an entrance at all. Chapter 4580. Could this be? Lin Yi looked at the Dragon of Five Evils. According to the Dragon of Five Evils, its master, the five-poison flood dragon, was the only other person in this space. However, he was already dead. That's right, this is my master's grave. The Dragon of Five Evils nodded. It had been laughing uncontrollably at Lin Yi's embarrassing encounter, but now it seemed to be deeply sad. This answer was within Lin Yi's expectations. Now that he had confirmed it, he couldn't help but feel deep respect for it. Although he had never interacted with the five-poison flood dragon, it was still a super spiritual beast that had once stood at the peak. This was a form of respect for a powerhouse, especially since it still had such a terrifying aura after its death. One could only imagine how powerful it was when it was alive. Linny sighed inwardly. If it wasn't for the vermilion bird, this 5-poison serpent would have become the new Azure Dragon Elder. That was a supreme existence that stood at the top of Sky-class Island. But now, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Everything had turned to dust. Why don't you set up a dragon grave for it? It doesn't even have a proper tombstone. How can it rest in peace after its death? The ghostly thing suddenly emerged from Linyi's body and spoke to the dragon of 5 evils sternly. The lingering aura of this place was the reason for the 5-poison flood dragon's lingering obsession. In this case, even if the 5-poison flood dragon was dead, it would never be able to escape. It could only sink in its endless obsession and resentment for all eternity. This was the most lamentable outcome for a member of the dragon clan. Senior Ghost, I also want to set up a dragon grave for my master. However, my master told me before he died that unless I set up a tombstone with the vermilion bird's bone, he wouldn't be able to die in peace. This was my master's last wish. I didn't dare to disobey it. The dragon of 5 evils said with bloodshot eyes. The ghostly thing and Linny fell silent. They bowed deeply to the 5-poison flood dragon at the same time. The ghostly thing then sighed and said, "Fine. Since your master had such a wish, you should work hard in this direction. Don't let it wait too long. That bastard, the vermilion bird, won't be able to be arrogant for long. I promise." I know. One day, I will use the vermilion bird's corpse as a sacrifice to my master's spirit in heaven. The 5 evils dragon took a deep breath and said with determination. At this point, the vermilion bird was already an opponent that the 5 venoms dragon had to kill, whether it was for the 5 venoms dragon or for itself. However, this opponent was too strong and too scary. Even though the 5 evils dragon was at the Earth opening stage, it could only hide here like a tortoise. Only when it was strong enough would the 5 evils dragon be born and make the vermilion bird pay the price of blood. Linny stood to the side and didn't say anything. He didn't have any grudges with the vermilion bird, but if he had enough strength, he would definitely make a move against the vermilion bird. After all, regardless of whether it was that ghostly being or the 5 malevolent dragons, they would not rest until the vermilion bird was dead. The group stayed at the 5-poison flood dragon's graveyard for a while before taking off again. With the speed of the spirit bird, they flew at full speed for over an hour. After that, Lin-Yi finally caught up with the 5 evils dragon. This place was very far from the 5-poison swamp, but even so, Lin-Yi couldn't find the end of this mysterious space. The vastness of this mysterious space was really incredible. If I'm not wrong, this should be the 3rd exit. Up there should be the 3rd exit, said the 5 fiends dragon as it pointed above. Linny heard this and looked up. The scene was the same as before. It was still filled with the 5 elemental killing chi. He couldn't see anything different. However, this wasn't strange. Even at the original place, Lin-Yi couldn't see through the 5 elemental killing chi to see the 5 poison swamp. If he wanted to know what was above, he would have to go up there. Above, where is this? Lin-Yi couldn't help but ask. Finally, he found a possible exit. At this moment, he couldn't help but want to give it a try. I don't know. Master didn't let me go up. Even he himself hasn't been there before. The only reason he knew about this place was because of the message left behind by the previous generation's flood dragon. No matter what, one thing is for sure. So, whether or not you want to leave this place, you really have to think carefully. The 5 evils dragon spoke in a serious tone. There was definitely danger. Otherwise, the 5 poison flood dragon wouldn't have warned the 5 evils. With their strength, they had to be so careful. If Linny was only at the peak of the early stage of the original soul stage, then the danger would be unimaginable. The West Mountain sect was very dangerous, and so was the Spirit Beast clan. However, the unknown place above might be even more dangerous than the previous 2 combined. If that was the case, Lin-Yi wouldn't be able to cry even if he wanted to. Lin-Yi gritted his teeth and turned his head to look at the ghostly thing floating beside him. He wasn't willing to give up just like this. He knew that this place was dangerous, but compared to the other 2 exits, there was at least a chance of survival. After all, If he went through the other two exits, there was a 99% chance that he would either die on the spot or be forced back. The one in front of him was more or less enough for him to imagine. According to the distance and direction I flew from just now, I can roughly judge the situation above. No wonder the 5-poisoned flood dragon didn't let the 5 evils boy go up from here. If it was me, I would do the same. The ghostly thing's tone was a bit complicated. Although the 5 evils dragon was the owner of this space and name, it didn't know the situation above at all. On the contrary, the ghostly thing knew it like the back of its hand. After all, the South Continent used to be its base camp. The entire map of the South Continent was in its head. As long as it knew the direction, it would naturally be able to find the corresponding position on the map. Hearing the ghostly thing's tone, he couldn't help but feel nervous. He hurriedly asked, "Above is endless sea." The ghostly thing slowly spat out these 4 words. "See?" Linny was stunned when he heard it. He thought it was somewhere like the core hinterland of the South Island. He even thought it might be the territory of a super spirit beast like the vermilion bird. He didn't expect such an answer. Even the 5 evils dragon next to him was a bit stunned. Since it was teleported here, it had never taken a step out. The 5-poisoned flood dragon didn't tell it much about these things, so it could be said that it knew nothing about the sea on the Heaven Stage Island. I can't be wrong. According to the location, it's definitely not land above. It's the endless sea above, and it's some distance from the South Island. The ghostly thing said with certainty. Chapter 4581. Stupid. Have you forgotten the sea beasts in the sea? They are existences that even our spirit beasts dare not provoke. The ghost smiled bitterly. Then what should I do? Only then did Linny realize that the sea beasts and the spirit beasts were very different, and most of the sea beasts would stay away from the South Island. He subconsciously threw this dangerous factor to the back of his mind and broke out in a cold sweat. When he was chased by the West Mountain Old Sect for the first time, Lin-E had encountered an extremely terrifying sea beast like the Ghost Ray. It was very close to the island, and its strength was already frightening. Now that he was far away from the South Island, once he encountered a sea beast, its strength would be much stronger. If he was unlucky, he would really die. The sea beasts are indeed terrifying, but it depends purely on luck. As long as your luck is a little bit better, you will always have a little hope of leaving alive. If it is the other 2 exits, to be honest, there is no hope at all. Whether you want to take the risk or not, it depends on you, kid. The ghost pondered for a moment and said, "Senior, you are right. In this case, let's go up from here. A living person can't be suffocated to death." Linny gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Wealth came from danger. Many times, people were forced to do nothing and could only bite the bullet and fight for their lives. In fact, to be honest, although the endless sea was full of danger, Lin-E did not intend to explore the sea after all. As long as he went out, he would immediately let the spirit bird rush out of the sea at the fastest speed. The process would be extremely short, and the possibility of encountering a super strong sea beast was not very high. Once he successfully rushed out of the sea, he would be free to fly in the sky. For Lin Yi's decision, the ghost was not surprised at all. "Do you really want to go from here? Then be careful. It sounds a little dangerous." The dragon of 5 evils reminded him. Although it had never encountered sea beasts, even the ghost, the former azure dragon, was so serious. That meant that it was indeed not simple. Maybe with its current strength of Earth opening realm, it would be in danger, let alone Linny, who was only at the peak of nascent soul realm. Linny nodded and said, "Don't worry. Thank you for your help during this period of time. I'll say goodbye to you now. See you later. I believe I'll come to the South Island to find you soon." After all, there was a ghostly thing here. When he had enough strength in the future, he would definitely accompany the ghostly thing to set foot on the South Island again. When that time came, the vermilion bird wouldn't be far away from its demise. "All right, I'll wait for you here. Take care." The 5 evils dragon nodded heavily. After spending more than 3 months together, it had already regarded Lin-E as a true old friend, not to mention that the ghost was also a senior dragon that it respected. If it wasn't for the fact that it couldn't disobey its master's order, it even had the intention to go out with Lin Yi. It was a pity that the Dragon of Five Evils was carrying a blood feud. Before its death, the Five Poisons Flood Dragon had specially told it to stay here and endure hardships. Before it was strong enough to fight against the Vermilion Bird, it must not leave this underground space at all, lest it would be killed. After saying goodbye to the Dragon of Five Evils, Lin Yi took a deep breath. Then he jumped on the back of the spirit bird, wrapped himself and the spirit bird with genuine qi, and suddenly soared into the sky. His figure quickly disappeared in the murderous aura of the five elements above. In the beginning, it was the same as what he had seen before. The murderous aura of the five elements was everywhere. It went from weak to strong, and after passing the middle level, it gradually became weaker. Not only did the pressure obviously become weaker, but the number was also decreasing rapidly. After rising for about half an hour, Lin Yi found that the murderous aura of the five elements around him had completely disappeared. At this moment, what appeared above his head was a cave entrance. Lin Yi had thought that this exit would be as vast as the Five Poison Swamp, but he didn't expect that this cave entrance would be much smaller than he had expected. It was only a few feet in radius. He and the spirit bird could go in and out freely. If it were the size of the Dragon of Five Evils, it would be a little difficult. If it were a bigger existence, it would be impossible to go in and out of here, unless the cave entrance was destroyed or a human figure was transformed. Looking into the cave entrance, it was pitch black inside, and the naked eye couldn't see the situation inside at all. He could only vaguely hear the rumbling sound of water, which must be very rapid. There's a whirlpool passage above, but as for what's on the other side of the passage, it depends on luck, the ghost said after sensing it with his divine awareness. It won't be like the whirlpool passage I saw before, which leads directly to the hinterland of the South Island, will it? Lin Yi suddenly had a bad feeling. He had been mentally prepared to face the endless sea, but if it led him to the hinterland of the South Island, it would be really funny. It's hard to say. Although I've specially studied these whirlpool passages near the South Island, it's only a small part of them. I've never even heard of a whirlpool passage in such a place before. Who knows where it leads to? It's all about luck. To be honest, it's not too late for you to regret now. The ghost's tone was a little cautious, which was rare. There's no turning back. Since I've come here, how can I go back? Even if there's a mountain of knives and a sea of fire in front of me, I have to brace myself and have a try. If I don't even have the courage, I won't be able to get out of here for the rest of my life. Lin Yi's determination was far greater than the ghost's expectation. Instead of being timid, he would rather go all the way. After saying that, Lin Yi did not hesitate for too long. After adjusting his state a little, he immediately ordered the spirit bird to dive into the whirlpool passage. The water in this whirlpool passage was extremely strong. If Lin Yi hadn't protected his body with true qi, the water might have torn him and the spirit bird into pieces. If Lin Yi's strength was still at the middle stage of gold core, he might not be able to bear it. But now he was at the peak of the early stage of Yuanying realm. The stronger the current, the faster the speed. After half an incense's time, Lin Yi and the spirit bird suddenly felt the air beneath them, and both of them were flung out. They struggled for a long time before they finally managed to stabilize themselves. It was so dark that they couldn't see their fingers, but Lin Yi was relieved when he saw this. From the strong water pressure in all directions, he could feel that they were in the depths of the sea. Although it was also dangerous, it was much better than being taken to the hinterland of the South Island. As long as they could get to the surface, everything would be fine and they wouldn't have to worry about anything. Chapter 4582. However, Lin Yi had his true qi to protect his body, so the seawater could not get close to him at all. Moreover, whether it was him or the spirit bird, although they could not breathe freely in the water like the sea beasts, they were still at the nascent soul stage after all. This kind of small matter could not stop them at all. As for the darkness of this place, it was not a big problem for Lin Yi. In the Five Poisons Swamp, he could not easily use his divine sense, but in this place, there was no such restriction. Even if the seawater still had a lot of barriers to divine sense, For Lin Yi, who was used to the high-pressure isolation of the five-poison swamp, this barrier was nothing. Since he could sense it with his divine sense, it did not matter if he could not see it with his naked eyes. However, for some reason, after such a long time, when he reused his divine sense, Lin Yi suddenly found that the strength of his divine sense was at least several times stronger than before, whether it was the sensing range or the clarity. Suddenly discovering this unexpected surprise, even Lin Yi could not help but be a little stunned. This feeling was like a dream, and he could not react for a long time. Although his strength was no longer the same as when he first entered the five-poison swamp, Lin Yi had never specially cultivated his divine sense. Firstly, he had not reached that level. Secondly, under the pressure of the five elements' murderous qi, he could not even use his divine sense. Even if he wanted to cultivate, he was powerless. Who would have thought that unknowingly, his divine sense would soar so much? However, after Lin Yi was stunned for a moment, he finally came up with a reasonable explanation. Could it be that after breaking through to the nascent soul stage, the divine sense will naturally soar? *T. The ghost tried hard not to curse out loud. Unlike the physical strength that could be quickly improved by taking elixirs, there was never a time for the divine sense to be reaped without effort. It could only rely on one's own continuous cultivation step by step and continuous understanding. Otherwise, let alone a nascent soul stage master, even a higher-level master of the profound ascending stage, the strength of the divine sense would absolutely be absolutely weak. Lin Yi completely did not know how lucky he was. Advancing to the nascent soul stage would allow one's divine sense to skyrocket? How could there be such a good thing in the world? Why did Lin Yi's divine sense suddenly soar? He didn't know, but as a bystander, the ghost knew it very clearly. It was clearly because of the inexplicable awakening of his divine sense when he discovered the five evils dragon. Such a rare opportunity had been encountered by this boy. If the strength of his divine sense did not soar, then it would really be unreasonable. However, although the ghost knew the reason, it could not tell Lin Yi, because the process of divine sense awakening was very mysterious. It was a state of unconscious epiphany. As long as the ghost didn't say anything, Lin Yi would still have the opportunity to enter this state in the future. However, if Lin Yi himself knew about it, he would definitely lean towards this direction after tasting the sweetness. That would be counterproductive. The ghost was silent. Lin Yi thought that he had guessed correctly and regarded the skyrocketing of the divine sense as a normal situation. He did not think too much about it. He just used his divine sense to perceive everything around him. What he needed to care most now was not how his divine sense was, but whether there were sea beasts around. However, before Lin Yi's divine sense was fully released, his heart was suddenly shocked without warning. An overwhelming pressure instantly forced his divine sense back into his body. Under the violent backlash, Lin Yi suddenly spat out a big mouthful of blood. Lin Yi's face changed in an instant. He had a bad feeling before, but he did not expect that the premonition would come true. There was really a terrifying super-existence in this place. Just the pressure alone could make his divine sense suffer such a backlash. Even the five evils dragon at the earth opening stage could not do this. A horrifying thought suddenly flashed through Lin Yi's mind. If it was stronger than the five evils dragon, wouldn't it be at least the existence of the sea-splitting stage? This endless sea was really unfathomable. Lin Yi was really full of bitterness at this moment. If he had known that he would suddenly encounter a super sea beast at the sea-splitting stage, he would have directly left the five-poison swamp. Facing the West Mountain Old Sect, at least he would have a chance to survive. Now that he was facing a sea beast at the sea-splitting stage, he did not even dare to move. It wasn't just Lin Yi, the ghost thing was shocked as well, but it took a while for it to react before letting out a sigh of relief. What a strong sea beast. Its soul is still intact even after death. It's almost as strong as me. Lin Yi's eyes widened as he looked at Lin Yi. What a strong sea beast. Its soul is still intact even after death. It's almost as strong as me, dead. This is the soul essence left behind after its death? Lin Yi heard this and suddenly became happy. No wonder it gave him the same feeling as the five-poison flood dragon graveyard. The only difference was that this pressure was stronger and more aggressive. Well, this soul essence is on the verge of collapse and will soon completely dissipate. In contrast, I am much luckier. It is only the last bit of obsession that has not dissipated. It has long lost its thoughts and consciousness. The ghost could not help but sigh. This scene made him feel the same. After all, he was like this in the secular world. If he did not meet Lin Yi, he might also be left with a bit of unconscious obsession. One must know that the environment in the secular world was much worse than here. Soul essence would only die faster and more thoroughly. Obsession? Lin Yi could not help but be a little speechless. If the opponent was a complete soul essence, then it was not difficult to understand why a peak early nascent soul master like him would be in such a state. But this was only a bit of remnant obsession. What was this? Yes, it's the last bit of obsession left behind before the primordial spirit disperses. When one's strength reaches a certain level, a random thought can exist independently in the world. Even if the physical body is destroyed, the primordial spirit will continue to exist, just like this sea beast in front of us. In fact, the 5 poisons flood dragon was the same, but it entrusted everything to the 5 evils, so its obsession was not as strong as this one, explained the ghostly thing. The last bit of remnant obsession can be so powerful? This is really unimaginable. Lin Yi suddenly felt that his horizons had been broadened. He was now at the peak early nascent soul, but according to the ghost, he had not even reached the threshold to systematically cultivate his divine sense. It was really a long time before he could reach such a terrifying realm where a thought could not be destroyed. Chapter 4583. Okay. Lin Yi nodded and immediately led the spiritual bird towards the remnant consciousness. Because of the existence of this terrible obsession, other sea beasts would hide far away. So, as the ghost said, this place would not be dangerous. As he got closer and closer to the remnant consciousness, Lin Yi felt murderous aura constantly surging towards him from all directions. Each aura was fiercer and fiercer than the one before, making people feel extremely depressed and creeped out. Gradually, Lin Yi finally came to the spatial source of the obsession. There was a faint layer of light in this place. Even without divine sense, he could easily see the surrounding scene. He couldn't help but exclaim, "What a terrible battlefield!" There was no doubt that there was a battlefield in front of them. Traces of an incomparably brutal battle could be seen everywhere. However, this was not a battle between human cultivators. Human cultivators would never come here to fight. This was an earth-shattering battle between 2 extremely powerful super beast clans. As far as Lin Yi could see, it was full of neatly broken reefs, dead corals, and the most conspicuous thing was the eerie white bones of the sea beasts. This was a huge graveyard of sea beasts. After a moment of shock, Lin Yi quickly found the source of the lingering will. It came from an extremely large corpse. Judging from the surroundings, this battle should have happened a long time ago, but the corpse in front of him didn't seem to be rotting at all. If even a random will could exist on its own, then it wasn't strange that the corpse didn't rot or decay. Looking at the huge and even spectacular corpse in front of him, Lin Yi could not help but feel a sense of admiration from the bottom of his heart. Whether it was humans or beasts, it was an innate instinct for all creatures to admire the top existences. Lin Yi didn't know what kind of sea beast it was. Its body was as big as a mountain, and it looked like a giant electric eel at first glance. But upon closer inspection, it didn't look like it, whether it was the exposed fangs or not. Whether it was the ferocious fangs exposed, or the dense and ferocious scales that were like giant knives, they constantly declared the horror and ferocity of its life. This corpse was definitely a rare treasure in the world. This was Lin Yi's first reaction. As the saying goes, every part of a spirit beast's body is a treasure. The more powerful the spirit beast, the higher the value of every part of its body. Naturally, the same principle applies to sea beasts. The corpse of a nascent soul stage spirit beast can be sold for a shockingly high price, and this giant electric eel-like sea beast in front of him is at least at the sea-splitting stage, or even stronger. What price would it fetch if it were to be sold? Lin Yi no longer had any desire for spiritual jades. But when he thought of the scene that would make everyone go wild for it, even he couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. Moreover, even if he didn't auction it off, this corpse would definitely be of boundless use. Perhaps it wouldn't be of use for now, but it would definitely be of great use in the future. Thinking of this, Lin Yi couldn't help but move forward to put the corpse into the space of the jade pendant. Although the other party was huge, Lin Yi had the mentality of taking as many as he could. If he really couldn't fit them all, he could just dismember them on the spot. He couldn't just leave with a pile of ready-made treasures in front of him empty-handed. That was a wastrel. However, Lin Yi suddenly frowned. He found that no matter how he tried to control the huge corpse in front of him, it didn't move at all. He couldn't put it into the space of the jade pendant at all. You'd better save it. The ghostly thing finally couldn't stand it anymore. It laughed cruelly and said, "Although this guy has been dead for who knows how many years, it still has remnants of its obsession. You can't put it in at all. Unless you can crush this obsession, that's more like it." Lin Yi suddenly felt like a bucket of cold water was poured over his head. Only then did he realize that since there were remnants of the obsession in the other party's body, it was equivalent to a living thing. Either it wholeheartedly surrendered to him, or it was like the ghostly thing said to destroy this obsession. Otherwise, it would be impossible to put it into the space of the jade pendant. But the problem was that the other party was at least a super-existence at the sea-splitting stage. Honestly speaking, Lin Yi didn't even have the qualifications to worship it in person. Even if it was just a remnant obsession, it could easily cause him to vomit blood. With Lin Yi's current strength, it was simply a fool's dream to want to destroy this obsession. Looking at such a huge treasure, but being helpless because of his lack of strength, this feeling was really depressing. Lin Yi shook his head helplessly, but still reached out to touch the corpse. Even if he couldn't put the whole thing into the space of the jade pendant, he could at least break off something. After all, even if it was just a piece of scale on the other party's body, it must be a treasure that was hard to find in the world. However, the moment his hand touched the scale, Lin Yi's whole body suddenly quivered, and then he couldn't move. On the surface, there was no special difference, but at this moment, his brain seemed to explode. He only felt that countless complex information was stuffed into his brain. Scenes flashed quickly, dazzling him and making him dizzy. With a splitting headache, Lin Yi was shocked and quickly wanted to take his hand back, but he found that the corpse seemed to have a magic power that firmly sucked his hand. Lin Yi couldn't move at all, and at this moment, the scenes that were reflected in his mind finally became clear, evolving into a complete memory fragment, as if it was another real existence, making people unconsciously immersed in it. It was still this unfathomable seabed. This super sea beast that looked like a giant electric eel was silent, quietly lurking in the deep gully sand, and a few miles in front of it was a fresh sea beast corpse. It seemed to be a powerful existence at the sea overlord level, but its stomach was split open, and around the wound was a scorched black. Its internal organs and blood kept flowing out, attracting all the sea beasts from all directions. This was a rare underwater feast. The sea beasts that were attracted were all fierce and ferocious, but they had no intention of attacking each other. Instead, they eagerly pounced on the huge sea beast's corpse. They didn't need to fight. The sea beast's corpse was already enough for them to fill their stomachs. Of course, if it wasn't enough after eating, then a bloody battle was inevitable. Chapter 4584. This was indeed an undersea feast, but the host of the feast was not the hundreds of fierce sea beasts that had gathered. They were just food on the table, nothing more. Lin Yi looked at the shocking scene in his mind and suddenly became speechless. He watched the super sea beast that looked like a giant electric eel surged out and devoured all the sea beasts that were electrocuted by it. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but have an urge to kneel down and surrender to it. After eating everything, the giant electric eel only left the bloody and tempting sea beast corpse, and it turned around and lurked in the deep sand again, waiting for prey to take the bait again. Lin Yi looked at this scene thoughtfully. The ghost once said that although the sea beasts and the spirit beasts were both beasts, they were completely different systems. To some extent, the spirit beasts were not much different from human cultivators. Their long lives were mainly focused on cultivation. However, the sea beasts were different. No matter how powerful the sea beasts were, they still maintained an extremely high bestial nature. Therefore, they rarely took the initiative to cultivate. For them, eating blood was the best way to cultivate. The higher the level of existence they ate, the faster their strength would increase. This was a pure law of nature. The law of the jungle was vividly reflected in them. However, compared to the way of survival of the sea beasts, what interested Linny more was another thing: the dark purple electric arc that flashed by just now. Linny had been carefully observing from the beginning. The hundreds of sea beasts that were attracted by the smell of blood were at least above the mysterious ascending stage. There were many sea beasts that were at the mountain opening stage, and there were even more than one at the sea splitting stage. However, with just a flash of electric arc, all the sea beasts were electrocuted without any suspense. What a terrifying strength! At that moment, Linny once again experienced what it meant to be creeped out. However, in addition to the fear in his heart, he did not know why he had a strange impulse. In his mind, he kept recalling the scene of the deep purple electric arc streaking across, and the restless feeling became more and more intense. Out of his instinct to constantly become stronger, Linny subconsciously wanted to imitate it. Unfortunately, this scene was too fast and too short. Even if he kept replaying it in his mind, he couldn't see it clearly. Linny had the instinctive urge to imitate it, but he couldn't grasp its essence. The memory fragments that were reflected in his mind continued. The giant electric eel was still lurking in the sand in the deep gully. However, this time, it did not attract those bloodthirsty sea beasts. In fact, the previous time, all the powerful sea beasts within 100 miles had been eaten clean. If they wanted to catch another wave of sea beasts, they would have to wait for a few months. However, this time, an uninvited guest came after just a few hours. 5 Poison Dragon. Looking at the existence in the memory fragments from afar, Lin Yi's eyes suddenly narrowed. This time, it was a dragon that shone with 5 different colors. This appearance was exactly the same as the most powerful 5 elements killing intent that he had seen before, but it felt more real. Its body was larger, and its aura was more threatening. He'd never seen a 5 Poison Jiao Dragon before, but Linny was certain that this was a 5 Poison Jiao Dragon. He slowly swam to the side of the sea beast's corpse. After the 5 Poison Dragons circled around it, it did not eagerly open its mouth to devour like the other sea beasts. After all, it was a true super spiritual beast. Although eating flesh and blood was still effective for it, it was not as attractive as eating sea beasts. Moreover, a few hours ago, over 100 powerful sea beasts had died here. There was still a thick killing intent lingering in the surrounding seawater. Even Lin Yi could easily sense that something was wrong, let alone the 5 Poison Dragon. The giant electric eel seemed to be very patient. No matter how the 5 Poison Dragons swam back and forth, it just hid in the deep sand and did not move. Although its body was huge, it perfectly blended in with its surroundings. Even the aura of its body was no different from its surroundings. Even though Linny knew that it was hiding here, he could not find it after a moment of distraction. He could not see any flaws at all. Only the unique perspective in the memory fragments told Lin Yi that this super electric eel had not really quietened down. It had been closely watching the 5 Poison Dragons' every move from beginning to end. It seemed to be ready to make a move at any time, ready to electrocute it to death, and then eat it to its heart's content. An almost undetectable electric current spread throughout the surrounding sea, covering a range of thousands of miles. However, because it was too weak, no creature in the sea could sense anything strange. This was a unique sensing method that belonged to the giant electric eel. It did not have eyes, nor did it use divine sense. However, these tiny electric currents were far more effective than divine sense. They were clearer and left no traces. The 5 Poison Dragon was the same as the other creatures in the sea. It did not seem to sense the existence of the giant electric eel at all. After circling the sea beast's corpse twice, it finally prepared to eat it. However, at this moment, the deep purple electric arc that had appeared before descended once again. Lin Yi's heart immediately tightened. Seeing that the five-poisoned dragon was about to follow in the footsteps of the hundreds of powerful sea beasts, he did not expect that the five-poisoned dragon, which had been struck by the deep purple electric arc, would suddenly turn into a phantom formed from vital energy and then quickly dissipated. The true body of the five-poisoned dragon had unknowingly appeared on top of the giant electric eel's head. Accompanied by an earth-shaking dragon roar, it waved its front claws, and a stream of five-colored vital energy instantly pierced through the giant electric eel's body. Seeing this, Lin Yi's eyelids suddenly trembled. After cultivating in the underground space for so long, his familiarity with the five elements' murderous aura could be said to be unparalleled. The stream of five-colored vital energy that the five-poisoned dragon had released was clearly an enhanced version of the five elements' murderous aura. If there was any difference between the two, it would be that it did not have the kind of natural intelligence that was born on its own. Instead, it was more easily controlled. When Lin Yi first saw the five elements' murderous aura, the ghost had said that as long as his strength was strong enough, he would be able to release a stream of five elements' murderous aura with a wave of his hand. At that time, Lin Yi had yearned to be able to do it himself. However, he did not have the extravagant hope of reaching this step in his subsequent cultivation. This was because with his current strength, it was impossible for him to activate the five elements' murderous aura. Chapter 4585. As he sighed with emotion, the memory fragments reflected in Lin Yi's mind suddenly became intense. The five elements' murderous aura of the five poisons flood dragon did not kill it in one blow. Instead, it completely stimulated the ferocity of the giant electric eel. When a super sea beast that could even swallow an existence at the sea-splitting stage went berserk, this scene was tantamount to the end of the world. The surging battle intent and the sharp murderous aura seemed to be the only two things left between heaven and earth, covering the sky and covering the earth in all directions. Out of his instinct to protect himself, Lin Yi subconsciously wanted to escape from this terrible and dangerous battlefield. Even if he only saw this scene in the memory fragments, the terrifying pressure that seemed to have materialized still made him breathless. However, just like at the beginning, Lin Yi had already fallen into the memory fragments and could not extricate himself. At this moment, he could not control his own will at all. The scene of the destructive battle between the five poisons flood dragon and the giant electric eel was deeply imprinted in his mind uncontrollably. Even if he closed his eyes, everything was always clear. In an instant, Lin Yi's whole body began to tremble violently like a sieve. He was on the verge of collapse. Just as the ghostly thing could not help but want to interrupt, Lin Yi suddenly stopped moving and entered a strange state. TSK, is this kid really blessed, or is his innate talent so unique? How can he always encounter such good things that others can't even dream of? The ghostly thing could not help but be amazed. At this moment, Lin Yi had once again entered an extremely mysterious state of epiphany. However, it was different from the unconscious awakening of his divine sense last time. This time, to see what he could comprehend, he would only know after he woke up. The only thing the ghostly thing could do now was to keep a lookout for him. This opportunity could not be asked for. The book-seeking net must not be interrupted by external forces. At this moment, in Lin Yi's sea of consciousness, the five poisons flood dragon and the giant electric eel were fighting fiercely. Powerful five elements murderous aura and deep purple electric arcs were constantly colliding between heaven and earth. Every time they collided, the world changed color. For the surrounding seas and even the entire ocean, it was like they had experienced an apocalyptic disaster. At this time, Lin Yi once again felt the stirring instinctively when he first saw the dark purple electric arc. However, this time, he was not imitating the dark purple electric arc, but the five elements murderous aura released by the five poison dragon. After all, Lin Yi had a deep understanding of the five elements murderous aura, And now that he saw the 5-poison serpent using it again and again, it was as if he had a ready-made teacher. It was an obvious opportunity for him to learn, and if he didn't hurry up and learn, that Linny was really stupid. Be it the 5-poison flood dragon or the giant electric eel, they were both super ferocious beasts that should not exist in this world. Furthermore, they seemed to be on par with each other in terms of strength. This unprecedented battle did not end in just a few moves. Instead, it unexpectedly fell into a stalemate of attrition. The more they fought, the angrier they became. In the end, they used all their trump cards and entered a state of fighting to the death. This benefited Lin Yi, who was a bystander. Otherwise, if the 5-poison flood dragon's attack was also like the giant electric eel's deep purple electric arc, the battle ended in a flash. If it ended in a flash, he would not even be able to tell how it attacked, let alone learn it secretly. But now, disregarding everything else, the 5-poison flood dragon had activated the 5 elements murderous chi no less than 100 times. The entire activation process was clearly seen by Lin Yi, who was a bystander and a peeping scholar. In addition, he already had a deep understanding of the 5 elements murderous chi. Learning it secretly was naturally twice the result with half the effort. This was especially so for Lin Yi, who was currently immersed in a rare state of epiphany. Regardless of whether it was his insight or his ability to practice, they were far from ordinary. Normally, he would not even dare to think about it. At this moment, he instinctively began to do things, learning bit by bit. Every time the 5-poison flood dragon activated the 5 elements murderous chi, Lin Yi would try to imitate it. Although he was confused at first, after repeating it over 100 times, Lin Yi's actions gradually began to look more like it. They were both murderous chi of the 5 elements. Although the murderous chi that was activated by the 5-poison flood dragon and the murderous chi that was formed naturally were essentially the same, they were two completely different things if one were to truly deconstruct them. The former was a powerful martial art that could be controlled by cultivators, while the latter was a powerful force that belonged to the heavens and earth. It could not be desecrated, nor could it be imitated. After an unknown amount of time, a faint stream of vital energy suddenly overflowed from Lin Yi's palm. In terms of power, it was completely unsightly. Any cultivator in the foundational stage could easily destroy it. However, after sensing this vital energy, even the ghostly thing could not help but be a little surprised. This was actually a murderous chi of the 5 elements. Although it was very weak, it was indeed a 5-colored vital energy. The 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth were all present. There was no doubt that this was a real murderous chi of the 5 elements. He actually managed to learn it? This kid is really a freak. After being stunned for a while, the ghostly thing faintly cried out in shock. It did say that as long as one was strong enough, one could activate the murderous chi of the 5 elements, but that was at least after the mountain opening stage. Right now, Linny was only at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. From the ghostly thing's point of view, a move like the murderous chi of the 5 elements was a terrifying martial art that could kill anyone in the mountain opening stage or even higher. Now, it was mastered by a kid at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. What kind of scene would that be? Once Linny truly displayed the murderous chi of the 5 elements, that scene would definitely not be as simple as fighting against an enemy of a higher level. It would feel like a 3-year-old suddenly taking out a gun from his pocket. It was not a toy gun, but a real gun that could really take a person's life. Even with the ghostly thing's experience and knowledge, when he thought of that scene, he sincerely shuddered. After spending so much time with Lin Yi, he had always thought that Lin Yi was a monster among the human beings. However, now that he thought about it, not only human beings, but all the creatures in the world were definitely abnormal existences. He was definitely even more abnormal than the former Azure Dragon. After successfully activating the murderous chi of the 5 elements for the first time, Lin Yi's face did not show any expression of joy. Instead, he continued to immerse himself in that state, still repeating it over and over again. The intensity of the murderous chi of the 5 elements became stronger little by little. Every time he practiced it, it became stronger. In the beginning, it was only at the level of the foundation building stage. Gradually, It became the level of the golden core stage, and then the level of the nascent soul stage. Finally, he could fully activate it with ease, and it became a brand new martial art that belonged to Lin Yi alone. To be continued. Chapter 4586. After mastering the murderous aura of the five elements, Lin Yi did not stop. After all, there was no harm in learning more skills. After secretly learning from the five poison dragon, he turned his attention to the giant electric eel and began to study the dark purple electric arc. Since it could compete with the murderous aura of the five elements for so long without being at a disadvantage, Lin Yi believed that if he could learn it and use it for himself, it would be a heaven-defying martial skill that would not be inferior to the murderous aura of the five elements. This would be a powerful trump card that would come in handy in the future. However, this time, no matter how much Lin Yi practiced, he could not grasp the key. This dark purple electric arc was obviously a move of the thunder attribute. Lin Yi did not have the thunder attribute, so he could not use it as it was. He could only try to understand the essence of it and then simulate it with the fire attribute martial skill. This was not a wrong idea. The martial skills in the world were all the same. It was not that Lin Yi had not done similar things before, but it was different this time. Once he mastered this dark purple electric arc, it would definitely be a top-level martial skill. It was not easy to understand it. Moreover, he had just successfully understood the murderous aura of the five elements. It was not that he had the talent of all five elements, but that he had been dealing with the murderous aura of the five elements for more than half a year. He had a deep understanding of it, which was why he was able to master it so quickly. However, this dark purple electric arc of the giant electric eel was something he had never seen before. How could he understand it? It was not that Lin Yi did not understand this, but this opportunity was too rare. He did not want to give up so easily. Naturally, the more top-level martial skills, the better. If he missed this opportunity, there would not be another one. Lin Yi might not be able to see a super sea beast like the giant electric eel in his lifetime. Even if he had no clue, Lin Yi persisted in practicing. If 100 times did not work, then 200 times. If 200 times did not work, then 500 times. As long as he persisted, he believed that he would see results. Lin Yi's perseverance was undeniable. No matter how clueless he was, he could still persevere. However, after trying for 600 or 700 times, the memory fragment that was reflected in his mind suddenly shattered. His entire consciousness seemed to be torn apart. The pain was unbearable, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood on the spot. Lin Yi's face was deathly pale, and it took him a long time to finally recover. Things had developed to this point, and it was difficult to continue. Because the memory fragments had been shattered, no matter how strong his willpower was, it was useless. He could only accept his fate and accept reality. After trying so hard for so long, he was still unable to comprehend a complete martial technique from the huge electric eel. This result made Lin Yi feel somewhat disheartened. However, Lin Yi did not really become depressed. After all, he had successfully learned the five elements' murderous aura. With this heaven-defying martial skill as a foundation, it could be said that he had gained a great harvest this time. Although it was not a small regret that he could not comprehend the giant electric eel's thunder martial skill, fate was bound to come to an end soon. Lin Yi was not a greedy person. What's more, it was only the five elements' murderous aura. Lin Yi's combat power had increased by more than several times. He was the strongest nascent soul stage master who had a perfect breakthrough. He was confident that he could deal with a peak nascent soul stage master when he was at the peak of the early nascent soul stage, and now that he had mastered the five elements' murderous aura, even if he encountered a profound ascending stage master, he still had the capital to fight. A mere peak early Yuanying stage was enough to compete with a master of the profound ascending stage, if even this was not enough. If he was still not satisfied, then Lin Yi would really be spurned to death by the world's heroes. How could others live? Sigh, what a pity. Lin Yi shook his head slightly. It was not because he could not comprehend the lightning martial technique. Instead, It was because the memory fragments that entered his mind had suddenly shattered into many incomplete fragments. It was impossible for him to comprehend anything of value from them. However, through these fragmented memory fragments, Lin Yi could more or less see the aftermath. The battle between the 5 poison dragon and the giant electric eel didn't have a clear winner. After fighting for who knows how long, it finally ended in a lose-lose situation. Because the battle was too big, the process of fighting had attracted the attention of many super-existences. Although they didn't dare to approach because they were afraid of the pressure of the 5 poison dragon and the giant electric eel, once they were given the opportunity to attack, no matter who won this battle, it would be a dead end. The 5 poison dragon wasn't stupid, and the giant electric eel wasn't stupid either. When they both noticed that something was wrong, the two super monsters chose to stop fighting at the same time. So even if they were seriously injured, because neither of them died, those who were watching from afar couldn't figure out their strength, so none of them dared to act rashly. After 1,000 years, fight again. This was the message left by the 5 poison dragon before it left. The giant electric eel's response was a pillar of lightning that shot into the sky. It used the most domineering and arrogant method to accept this challenge. At the same time, it completely scared away those who were watching it. After confirming that the 5 poisons flood dragon had completely disappeared from this region of the sea, the giant electric eel slowly dragged its battered body back to its original hiding place to recover. However, its injuries were far too severe. It did not know how long it had been, perhaps years, perhaps decades, or even centuries. In the end, it was unable to recover its vitality, and its tremendous vitality slowly disappeared from its body. Finally, it became the corpse that stood before them. As for the 5 poisons flood dragon, it had never appeared again. Perhaps it was dead as well. After all, its injuries were not much lighter than the giant electric eel's. Of course, it was also possible that it was still alive. It was just hiding somewhere and licking its wounds, waiting for a comeback. The memory fragments stopped there. In the end, Lin Yi didn't see the end of the 5 poison dragon. However, according to his speculation, it probably suffered the same fate as the giant electric eel. This was not only because of its heavy injuries, but also because it didn't return to the mysterious space beneath the 5 poison swamp. According to the 5 poison dragon, that place had always been the territory of the 5 poison dragon. The 5 elements killing intent was fatal to other spiritual beasts, but it was a great supplement to the 5 poison dragon. If the 5 poison dragon wanted to heal, it would definitely return to the mysterious space as soon as possible. However, it didn't do so, which meant that something must have happened during the process, and it was very likely that it died. Chapter 4587. After all, its master had never walked through this exit, so it was unlikely that he would suddenly appear in the sea. Furthermore, their strengths did not match. This 5 poison flood dragon and the giant electric eel were both existences above the sea-splitting stage, while the 5 poison dragon's master was only at the sea-splitting stage. N is an element of when he thought of the 5 poison flood dragon and the giant electric eel. These two terrifying existences, one had fallen, and the other was very likely to fall. Lin Yi could not help but sigh. The world was unpredictable. If the two of them were still alive, especially the 5 poison flood dragon, the situation in the entire South Continent would probably be very different. At the very least, the vermilion bird would not be able to act as he pleased as he did now. It would be very difficult for the tragedy that had happened to the 5 poison dragon's master to repeat itself. After all, this guy's strength was too ferocious and unreasonable. Even the vermilion bird might not be able to do anything to it. As Lin Yi sighed, the fragmented memory in his mind fell apart even more. In the end, it turned into powder and completely disappeared, as if it had never existed. The surrounding sea suddenly became calm again, and it was an unprecedented calm. There was no trace of the mountain-like pressure that Lin Yi had felt before. Lin Yi was slightly startled. The obsession left by the giant electric eel had disappeared. Could it be that the memory fragment was its obsession? When the memory fragment shattered, its obsession also disappeared. Lin Yi was stunned for a long time. He carefully recalled the situation just now, and then came to a sudden realization: did I accept its inheritance? Of course it counts. Although it didn't directly bestow you with strength, the memory itself is the most precious inheritance. Not to mention, you were able to comprehend a martial skill like the 5 elements killing chi. I have to say, you are really lucky. Even I am a little envious. The ghostly thing half-jokingly said. I see. Lin Yi took a deep breath and nodded with some regret. It seems that I really have to thank this sea beast. It and the 5 poison flood dragon can be considered half a master to me. It's just that I don't even know what race it is, so I won't be able to pay my respects to it in the future. What a pity. There's nothing to be pitiful about. You were able to comprehend the 5 elements killing chi from its lingering obsession. This is your own ability and fortune. In turn, it has to thank you properly. The ghostly thing said disapprovingly. Huh? What do you mean? Linny couldn't help but ask curiously. If you hadn't interfered, this obsession of his would definitely have continued to exist, and he would be unable to free himself from it for all eternity. I don't need to say any more about how tragic it is. But now that the obsession is gone, it can be considered to have finished what it started. Don't you think it should be thanking you? The ghostly thing laughed. All right, so that's how it is. Linny smiled, but he still bowed deeply to the corpse of the giant electric eel. In any case, he was the one who benefited from it, and he was always grateful to this super sea monster. He did not dare to forget this inheritance. It's a pity that this guy's primordial spirit has perished, and he's been reduced to this last bit of obsession. There's nothing substantial that can be passed on to you. You can only comprehend it by yourself through memory fragments. Otherwise, you'll definitely gain more this time. That's the real big opportunity. The ghostly thing felt sorry for Lin Yi. To miss out on such an opportunity that only comes once in 10,000 years, it was truly a pity. Just a small piece of memory was enough for him to understand the 5 elements of murderous aura. If it was a complete inheritance like the 5-bane dragon, he would have been able to understand it. What would that be like? Hee, that's impossible. If this sea beast senior really does have a complete primordial soul, then it's impossible. Why would he pass it on to me for no reason? After all, I'm not a sea beast, nor am I its disciple. Perhaps its first reaction will be to seize my body and be reborn. Linny laughed heartily. He didn't feel any regret at all. There were no ifs in this world, and he didn't have the habit of fantasizing. That's true. The ghostly thing smiled. It understood after thinking about it. Even if it didn't want to seize Yi Shiwen's body and be reborn, it would never seek its own death by passing on everything to a human it didn't know. It was better to live than to die. Its fragmented primordial spirit was better than being dead. While Linny was talking to the ghostly thing, the huge corpse in front of him suddenly collapsed for some unknown reason. The originally majestic behemoth collapsed in a short period of time, turning into a large pile of powder that quickly drifted away with the sea current. All this happened without warning. Linny looked at the empty space in front of him and couldn't help but be stunned. He couldn't say a word for a long time. What's going on? Linny finally asked after a long time. He almost bit his tongue off. As you can see, the corpse collapsed. The ghostly thing didn't seem surprised at all. Isn't that a little too fast? It was clearly fine before. How did it collapse just like that? Linny couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He had tried to break off the scales before. Although it was interrupted because of the sudden influx of memory fragments, there was absolutely no doubt that the corpse was extremely strong. Previously, its obsession hadn't dissipated, so it could still maintain the corpse in its original state. But now, without the umbrella of obsession, this corpse is equivalent to an unearthed cultural relic that suddenly sees the light of day again. Isn't this a common situation in your secular world? Think about how old this corpse is. Even if it's not 1,000 years old, looking at its posture, it must be at least a few hundred years old. If it wasn't for the obsession, there wouldn't be any bones left. The corrosion of the sea is much stronger than that of the ground, the ghostly thing explained. Okay, so that's what happened. I thought I accidentally touched some taboo. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief with some lingering fear. Then, a look of regret appeared on his face. He originally wanted to get some treasures from this corpse. With the terrifying power of the giant eel, he believed that whatever he got from this corpse would be the most precious treasure in the world. But now, he didn't have the chance. Hee, don't think about those useless things anymore. I advise you to hurry up and go, kid. If you stay here for a while, I'm afraid we'll have to accompany this guy, the ghostly thing suddenly reminded with a strange smile. Chapter 4588. Thinking of this, Lin Yi did not dare to neglect and quickly ordered the spirit bird to leave the bottom of the sea as soon as possible. Although his combat power had skyrocketed, if he was really entangled by sea beasts in such a place, the possibility of escaping was almost zero. The speed of the spirit bird was extremely fast, even in this endless sea, because Lin Yi had been isolating the seawater with his genuine qi. Its speed could not be underestimated. In any case, it was a spirit beast of the original Soul stage, so it was impossible for it to be helpless in the sea. Lin Yi was afraid of being entangled by sea beasts, but the spirit bird was even more afraid. At this moment, the terrifying speed that erupted at this moment made Lin Yi a little stunned. He had always thought that the spirit bird had no strong points except for speed. Now it seemed that this was not wrong. Speed was indeed this bird's specialty, and the endless sea could not stop it. Lin Yi was secretly speechless. With the speed that the spirit bird showed at this moment, many native sea beasts might not be able to catch up with it. He even suspected that this guy was originally a water bird, but it had not been discovered before. While he was thinking about it, the spirit bird had already carried Lin Yi into the sky, like a sharp arrow piercing through the sea and across the sky. The whole process was a mess, and from beginning to end, they were not targeted by any sea beasts. After more than half a year, this was the first time that he could really see the light of day again. The depressed state of mind that had been suppressed for a long time was finally released. Lin Yi felt that his whole body was a lot lighter. Combined with this scene at this time, it was quite a transcendent posture of a bird flying in the sky. It's really dangerous. Lin Yi looked down and found that at the place where he rushed up, there were several huge shadows at this moment. Although he could not tell what kind of sea beasts they were, judging from their size, they should not be easy to deal with. Lin Yi could not help but secretly feel lucky that he ran fast enough. Otherwise, he would really be in danger. After calming down a little, Lin Yi immediately let the spirit bird fly in the direction of the North Island. This time, because he was chased by the old sect of West Mountain, he had exceeded the time limit of the task for a long time. He didn't know if anything had happened in the North Island. At this moment, Lin Yi was eager to go home. Although he was not a native of the North Island, on this Heaven Stage Island, the North Island was his second hometown. All the familiar people and things were in the North Island. In his heart, the North Island was incomparable to other places. The spirit bird chirped excitedly and immediately spread its wings to fly towards the north. Its current excitement was even greater than Lin Yi's. It wasn't that it was attached to Bei Dao. It was just that ever since it had reached the original infant stage, it could finally test its extreme speed. The spirit bird clan had an instinctive pursuit of speed. If they were not allowed to experience the extreme speed that they were so proud of from time to time, they would really go crazy. The spirit bird that Huang Xiaodao had left behind had been restrained for over 3 months. If it was not allowed to soar to its heart's content, it might really go crazy. This spirit bird is quite interesting. The ghostly thing suddenly said with great interest. What's wrong? Lin Yi couldn't help but feel strange when he heard it. At this moment, he was a little shocked by the speed of the spirit bird he was sitting on. He originally thought that this spirit bird's talent was mediocre. Even if its strength had skyrocketed, its speed would at most increase by a few times. But now it seemed that it was not just a few times, it was simply dozens of times. Do you know that the spirit bird is recognized as the most useless clan among all the spirit beasts? The ghostly thing asked instead of answering. It can't be, right? Lin Yi grinned disapprovingly. Although the spirit bird couldn't compare to many other powerful spirit beasts he had seen, it was recognized as the most useless. That was a bit exaggerated. There were so many spirit beasts in the world, and there was always one that was weaker than the spirit bird. I'm not the one who said that. It's something recognized by the spirit beast clan. The ghostly thing smiled and then added, in my opinion, even if the spirit bird clan isn't really the weakest, it's definitely one of them. There's no doubt about that. Why? Linny still couldn't figure it out. The reason is very simple. Every spirit beast clan has their own unique racial talent. Some are strong, some are weak, and there's a variety of them. But one thing is for sure, all spirit beasts have racial talent. There's only one clan that's an exception, and that's the spirit bird. The ghostly thing explained. Huh. Linny was instantly stunned. This was the first time he had heard of this, but after thinking about it carefully, it seemed to be the case. Every spirit beast he had seen before had racial talent. Even the skybolt pig, which had 0 combat power, had a unique treasure hunting talent. He had never seen this spirit bird before. Although its level wasn't low, the spirit bird didn't seem to be much different from other ordinary birds. If it wasn't for the fact that they can rely on the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to cultivate, they wouldn't have been classified as a spirit beast. A spirit beast clan that doesn't even have racial talent. Don't you think they're the weakest? The ghostly thing paused for a moment, then said, the spirit bird doesn't have any racial talent. If you really want to find a specialty, the only thing that barely meets this standard is their speed. But that's all. There are more than 1 or 2 clans that are faster than them. All right, that sounds really sad. Linny was speechless as he looked at the spirit bird. This thing wasn't just average. It simply didn't have any talent at all. If it was another original infant stage spirit beast, then it would definitely be a powerful fighting force that couldn't be ignored. But this was a spirit bird. So what if it was in the original infant stage? If he really forced it to fight, then it would at most be an enlarged version of a poultry. That kind of scene was something that Linny couldn't bear to look at. Don't be in a hurry to be disappointed. Although the spirit bird clan doesn't have any natural talent, it doesn't mean that they don't have a chance to turn things around. According to what I know, they are the only spirit beast clan that can cultivate their speed to the extreme. Although they are a special case, at least they have potential. The ghostly thing said, cultivate their speed to the extreme? Didn't you just say that there are more than 1 or 2 clans that are faster than them? Linny was confused. Chapter 4589. Senior, you mean to say that this fellow is also a heavenly spirit bird? Hearing this, Linny immediately became excited. A heavenly spirit bird's strength meant that he would have more help. If it really was a heavenly spirit bird with unparalleled speed, then it would definitely be of great use in the future. That's hard to say. The heavenly spirit bird clan has only produced one heavenly spirit bird in a few thousand years. As for whether this fellow has the chance to become the next heavenly spirit bird, I can't see it. The ghostly thing curled its lips. Then why did you say so much? Linny was momentarily speechless. He had been happy for nothing. I'm telling you this because I suddenly realized that this fellow's speed is much faster than other spirit birds. Maybe it has some special characteristics in this area. Don't think too much about it. The ghostly thing laughed. Faster than other spirit birds? How much faster? Linny's interest was piqued. Compared to other nascent soul stage spirit birds of the same level, its speed is at least 3 times faster. I'm not too sure about the specifics. Maybe it's because it's soaked in the star ink milk with you. The ghostly thing thought for a moment before replying, 3 times faster? That's already very exaggerated. Senior, now that you mention it, I feel that this fellow might really be a heavenly spirit bird. Linny's eyes lit up when he heard this. The star ink milk's effect on spirit beasts was far less than that of human cultivators. If it was purely because of the star ink milk, it would at most be twice as fast as other nascent soul stage spirit birds. 3 times faster was simply impossible. Hee kid, don't be so wishful thinking. Whether or not it's a heavenly spirit bird depends on its future. The higher its level, the greater its speed advantage. Only then will it have a slight chance of becoming a heavenly spirit bird. Otherwise, it's all nonsense. The ghostly thing said nonchalantly. Although it was the one who started this topic, it really didn't think that this fellow could become a heavenly spirit bird. After all, the possibility of it becoming a heavenly spirit bird was too slim. It was even rarer than winning the lottery in the mortal world. Even if there's only a 1 in a million chance, it's still a chance. It's still a chance. It's better than nothing. Lenny grinned. Since there was nothing else to do, he didn't have the mood to meditate and cultivate for the time being. Thus, he sat on the back of the spirit bird and continued to chat with the ghostly thing, treating it as an eye-opener. After an hour, Lin Yi was already far away from the South Island and the sea area of the South Continent. After all, the speed of the spirit bird was much faster than before. Although the sea area of the South Continent was vast, it was nothing compared to its extreme speed. Lenny was thinking about when he could return to North Island. Suddenly, he felt an inexplicable sense of panic in his heart. At the same time, the warning sound of the jade pendant rang out. A huge shadow suddenly covered the top of his head, and a cold, murderous aura assaulted his face. Lenny was startled. It couldn't be the West Mountain Elder again, could it? He clearly didn't use the exit of the Five-Poison Swamp. The West Mountain Old Master shouldn't have been able to detect him at all. If he was caught even then, how could he live? Lenny raised his head to take a look, and his heart relaxed. Fortunately, it was not the West Mountain Sect Master. Lenny relaxed, but the spirit bird under him looked very panicked, because the shadow came from a giant ferocious bird 10 feet away from his head. And it was a ferocious bird that Lenny was familiar with, the ghost-eyed golden eagle. Judging from the momentum, the strength of this ghost-eyed golden eagle should be at the middle stage of Yuanying realm. At the moment, a pair of gloomy ghost eyes were staring at him maliciously. It seemed that it would pounce on him at any time. Lenny looked at the golden-eyed eagle above him, who was glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey, and then looked at his spirit bird, which was trembling with fear. He couldn't help but sigh. He was not afraid of not knowing what was good, but he was afraid of comparing. When the ghostly thing said that the spirit bird was the most useless spirit beast, he didn't think much of it. Now, with the comparison, it was obvious who was superior. Whether it was the appearance or the momentum, the ghost-eyed golden eagle won without any suspense. As for the strength, there was no need to talk about it. His spirit bird's trembling appearance had already shown everything. Even the speed that it was best at, the ghost-eyed golden eagle could easily catch up. It was a complete defeat in all aspects. As the ghostly thing said, the speed of the spirit bird could only be regarded as above average. Even if Huang Xiaodao was much faster than the other spirit birds, at present, it could only be regarded as above average. However, the ghost-eyed golden eagle was second to none in terms of speed, not to mention its strength was a level higher. Catching up with the spirit bird at the moment was not a problem at all for it. The future is long. If you can become a heavenly spirit bird, it will be easy to play with it. Lenny smiled and comforted it. Although he knew that the other party was up to no good, he was still very relaxed at this time. With strength, there was confidence. Of course, there was nothing to panic about. Heavenly spirit bird? What kind of **T was that? You want to easily play with my ghost-eyed golden eagle to death? Such big words, does your family know? At this time, a rough voice suddenly came from the back of the ghost-eyed golden eagle. It's just a joke. I'm sorry to have made you laugh. Lenny nodded slightly. He had long noticed that there was someone on the back of the ghost-eyed golden eagle. However, to him, as long as it wasn't a big shot like the Shishan Elder, there was nothing to be afraid of. It would be best if they lived in peace. However, if the other party really dared to make a move, it would be a good time to test the power of the 5 elements killing aura. A joke? But from your tone, why do I feel like it's true? Along with the man's voice, the ghost-eyed golden eagle suddenly lowered its altitude. Its sharp claws carried a frightening astral wind, almost tearing people apart. If it wasn't for the spirit bird dodging in time, it would have suffered a great loss immediately. After pulling a little distance between them, Lin Yi looked coldly at the middle-aged man on the back of the ghost-eyed golden eagle. It was a typical curly-bearded man. His whole body exuded a fierce and domineering aura that made people's hearts palpitate. However, What made Linny a little surprised was that this guy was actually wearing a pair of sunglasses. For a moment, Lin even thought that he had returned to the secular world. However, he immediately reacted. With the central chamber of commerce blossoming everywhere on Heaven Stage Island, these products of the secular world had long become popular on Heaven Stage Island. Even high-tech products like computers were popular, let alone a small pair of sunglasses. It had to be said that this guy in front of him was quite good at dressing up. The curly-bearded man was already a person that people didn't dare to approach. Now that he wore a pair of sunglasses, it added a bit of a baleful aura. It was really daunting. However, that was to others. In Lin Yi's eyes, this guy was similar to Tsihua in the secular world. He was purely a gangster. Chapter 4590. Oh, your eyesight is not bad. You know that I want to rob you. Then what are you talking about? Hurry up and take out all the good stuff. The curly-bearded man immediately laughed, and then added, Don't play tricks on me. Those who ventured out of the South Continent must have good stuff in their hands. If you hand it over consciously, I can spare your life. If you play tricks on me, then I can only let you feed the sea beasts. You don't look like a fool. I hope you are a smart person. I believe I am a smart person, but it's hard to say whether you are. Robbery? Hee hee, this is really not a big deal in the South Continent Sea. But do you know what happened to those guys who robbed me last time? Lin Yi was still sitting on the back of the spirit bird and said with a playful smile, What happened? The curly-bearded man was not in a hurry to make a move. He also put on an expression like a cat playing with a mouse. He squinted at Lin Yi and seemed to be calculating how many benefits he could get this time. 3 were thrown into the sea to feed the beasts, and the last one is locked up. We don't know if he's alive or not, but I don't think you'll be that lucky. There's still the sea all around us, and it'd be easier to just feed the beasts. It'd be a perfect ending, don't you think? Linny said seriously. TSK, you are really arrogant. You want to throw me into the sea to feed the sea beasts? Ha 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 ha. The curly-bearded man suddenly laughed uncontrollably, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He was out of breath for a long time and could not stop. Linny glanced at him and suddenly ordered the spirit bird under him. It seems that he is a psychopath. He is so pitiful. God is kind to all living things. Let's go. After that, the man and the bird really left. The curly-bearded man, who was still laughing, almost fainted. Just now, Linny looked at him as if he was looking at a fool. This kid actually dared to treat him as an idiot? With a scream, the ghost-eyed golden eagle, who was left behind, caught up in an instant. With lightning speed, it blocked in front of Lin Yi and the spirit bird. The corner of the curly-bearded man's mouth twitched. He stared coldly at Lin Yi and said, You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, right? Okay, you have guts. Today, I really don't want any treasure from you. Just because of what you said just now, you must die today. After that, the curly-bearded man's aura suddenly skyrocketed. A domineering aura pressed on Lin Yi and the spirit bird without reservation. The spirit bird's body was unstable and almost fell into the sea. Even Lin Yi's was shocked. This guy turned out to be a master. Although it seemed that he was only at the early stage of the mysterious ascension realm, experts of this level would have a foothold no matter where they went. Even the most powerful sects would treat them as distinguished guests. Not to mention being an elder in power, no matter how bad it was, he could at least be a guest. If he was in the 3 pavilions of the North Island, he would already have the opportunity to enter the Elders' Council. To be honest, Linny had never thought that such an existence would come out to be a robber. The things in this world were really strange. There were all kinds of people. A master in the early stage of profound ascension couldn't make money, but he had to come out to be a robber. Looking at Lin Yi's incredulous eyes, the curly-bearded man suddenly laughed proudly again. He liked this kind of look the most, so every time he looked for someone to make a move, he would not show his cultivation at the early stage of profound ascension. Only when it was almost time to make a move would he show his sharpness. This was the feeling of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Scared? Ha 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 ha. Unfortunately, it's too late. If you had taken the initiative to hand over the treasure just now, I might have let you live. But now, since I said that you must die, there is no second possibility. Don't you understand?" The curly-bearded man laughed wildly without any scruples. "Do I have the power?" Lenny couldn't help but grin. Seeing that the guy was still looking at him like he was an idiot, he frowned slightly and said, "Are you really an idiot? If you really have the power, then I would have died the moment you said the word die. How could I still be alive now? I say, how did you get your strength at the early stage of profound ascension? Don't you need IQ to cultivate these days?" After hearing this, the curly-bearded man's face turned red. Even though he was wearing sunglasses, it could be seen that he was just boasting about himself. He was only at the early stage of the profound ascension realm, and he was still at least 108,000 miles away from the real verbally enforcing law. "You have a sharp tongue. Good, very good. I've changed my mind now. I've decided not to throw you into the sea to feed the sea beasts. I'm going to cripple you, then hang you up with a rope and drag you into the sea to fish for sea beasts. What do you think of this idea?" The curly-bearded man said angrily, "It's not bad, but I think the sea beasts might not like to eat my meat. They definitely prefer to eat someone with a stronger smell of blood. It seems that you are more suitable." Lenny smiled faintly. The curly-bearded man flew into a rage. He was choked for a long time and couldn't say a word. Only now did he finally realize one thing. If they really wanted to bicker, even if there were 10 of him, he wouldn't be a match for this sharp-tongued kid. "How about it? You also think it makes sense, right?" Lin-Yi crossed his arms and looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. If it was before, he probably wouldn't be in the mood to talk nonsense with a robber, even if the other party was an early-stage profound ascension master. But now he was in a good mood, and this was the first time he saw a living person in more than half a year, so he unconsciously wanted to play with him. Being looked at by Lin-Yi like this, the curly-bearded man's anger soared to the heavens. He immediately lost the thought of a cat playing with a mouse, and immediately said with a murderous look, "I've seen many people who don't know life from death, but it's the first time I've seen someone as reckless as you. Kid, let me give you a word of advice. It's useless to just talk. It will only make your death more miserable. Remember this in your next life." After saying that, the curly-bearded man no longer gave Lin-Yi a chance to speak. He suddenly pulled out a pitch-black long rod from behind him, and along with a roar, he smashed the rod down towards Lin-Yi's head from afar. His rod was 12 feet long, and the distance between the two parties was at least more than 10 feet. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be able to reach Lin-Yi, but when the rod fell, it turned into a large and fierce shadow of the rod that blotted out the sky and earth. The terrible murderous aura that was revealed was enough to change the color of the sky. Chapter 4591. Accompanied by the horrifying whistling of the wind, mixed with the shadows of the rod, it was like a group of terrifying demons that chose to devour people. At this moment, Lin-Yi and the spirit bird were shrouded by the shadows of the staff. They were like a small boat in a raging storm, swaying in the wind and rain as if they could be destroyed at any time. If they were even grazed by the shadow of the staff, they would be doomed immediately. As expected of a master in the early stage of the profound ascension realm, he is really not simple. Lin-Yi saw this and smiled calmly. Not only was he not nervous, but he suddenly became a little excited. His eyes were extraordinary, and his fighting spirit was surging. In the face of the overwhelming rod shadow, Lin-Yi's eyes were filled with killing intent. His right hand suddenly arched into the shape of a dragon's claw. Each of his fingertips gushed out a single color of qi. 5 qi quickly gathered in his palm. Accompanied by a dragon's roar, the 5 elements of killing intent rose against the sky. "Haha, I thought you had a lot of confidence. It turns out that you were just a weakling in the early stage of the nascent soul stage. A mere firefly dares to compete with the sun and the moon?" The bearded man saw this and suddenly laughed. Before, when Lin-Yi hid his strength, he was more or less uncertain. But now that he saw the details of Lin-Yi, he suddenly had no more scruples. The strength of the early stage of the nascent soul stage could not be considered weak. but it also depended on who he was compared with. In a small place, he was naturally a master who could dominate a small area, but in front of a profound Ascension Realm cultivator, he was at most a fart. The difference between them was almost a whole realm. Such a disparity in strength had already determined the outcome. What made him feel even more ridiculous was that his opponent clearly knew that there was a huge disparity in strength, but he still didn't think of taking the opportunity to escape. Instead, he stubbornly braced himself and fought him head-on. His brain was simply too stupid to be saved. The bearded man couldn't help but laugh wildly when he saw this. People with sharp tongues generally did not have great wisdom. These words were really not false. Of course, in his opinion, even if the other party chose to escape, he was stupid. His ghost-eyed golden eagle's speed was far above the other party's trash spirit bird. How could he escape? Die in peace, 10,000 rods shattering. The curly-bearded man let out an explosive roar that shook the heavens. In an instant, the black rod shadows that had blotted out the sky and covered the earth converged into one, transforming into a solid killing heaven rod that smashed down. Every rod shadow had the power of 1,000 pounds, and this killing heaven rod that had condensed countless rod shadows, its power was more than 10 million pounds. Oh, keep that to yourself. Lenny smiled slightly. Although he was enveloped by the 10,000-rod smash, his expression remained unchanged. Although his opponent's martial technique was powerful, he did not believe that the 5 elements killing chi he had comprehended from the 5 poison flood dragon would lose. As he spoke, the heaven-defying 5 elements killing intent had already transformed into a flood dragon that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. It met the opponent's heaven-reaching staff head-on. In an instant, the surrounding area of 1,000 miles was filled with ghostly wails and wolf howls, and the weather changed color. You think you can block my 10,000 cudgel smash just by creating a dragon? What a joke. The curly-bearded man was about to use this last opportunity to ridicule him. However, before he finished speaking, the scene in front of him made his expression freeze. It was very different from what he expected. The dragon formed by the killing intent of the 5 elements was not smashed by the rod. Instead, before the power of the sky-shattering rod was raised to the extreme, it actually followed the rod, dragon coiling pillar, and an even more exaggerated scene was yet to come. After the killing intent of the 5 elements entangled the sky-shattering rod, the 5-colored divine light on its body flowed rapidly. The insufferably arrogant sky-shattering rod actually fell apart in the blink of an eye. It was crushed by it. The bearded man was so scared that his tongue was hanging out. Sky-shattering rod was a powerful martial skill of his. Just now, because he attacked in anger, he did not hold back at all, nor did he underestimate the enemy. A profound ascending early stage used all his strength to deal with a mere peak early nascent soul stage. How could this be the result? Even if you beat him to death, he could not figure out why this was happening. In fact, he was indeed going to die. After the 5 elements killing chi crushed the Tong Tian terminus rod, it did not dissipate into thin air. Instead, it directly found him, the main master. The curly-bearded man and the ghost-eyed golden eagle under him could be said to be unprepared for this. Without any suspense, they were both penetrated by the 5 elements killing chi, leaving a huge bloody hole in their chests. The killing intent of the 5 elements is indeed a rare and terrifying martial skill. This time I've really earned a lot. Watching the bearded man and the ghost-eyed golden eagle fall straight into the sea, he couldn't help but be shocked. He did expect that the killing intent of the 5 elements could fight against a profound ascending stage master, but he never thought that it would be so easy, killing them on the spot. Lin-E and the spirit bird stayed in the air for a while. After all, the other party was a profound ascending stage master. Although the bloody hole in his chest was a bit scary, with his strong vitality, as long as he could get timely treatment, there was still a chance for him to survive. Okay, let's go. A profound ascending stage master came out to rob us. Why bother? Lenny shook his head. When he saw the bearded man and the ghost-eyed golden eagle fall into the sea together, there was no need to continue watching. because the other party was definitely dead. As expected, at the same time Lin Yi and the spirit bird left, the curly-bearded man and the golden-eyed eagle were immediately surrounded by a few sea beasts that followed the smell of blood. In the blink of an eye, they were completely devoured. This time, they really couldn't be more dead. Continuing to fly in the direction of the North Island, they would pass by the Middle Island on the way. If there were no accidents, they would arrive soon. Linny wanted to go to the Middle Island to take a look. After all, the Middle Island had the will of heaven, Kaizhongyang, and Ho Guanqi, especially the two confidants, Tianshan and Sydney. After so long, Linny missed them very much. However, after thinking about it carefully, Lin Yi finally gave up the tempting idea of turning to the Middle Island. Unless he got the permission of the Middle Island Master Pavilion, flying spirit beasts could not fly over the Middle Island without authorization. If Linny wanted to enter the Middle Island, he would have to spend a lot of effort. What's more, he had been away from the North Island for too long, far beyond the deadline of the mission, and he couldn't send back a message on the way. Normal people would think that something had happened to him. He didn't know what happened to his little brothers, and there was also the King of Rags. All of this made Linny quite worried. He could only let go of the idea of Middle Island first. Anyway, the two women, Tianshan and Sydney, were taken care of by the will of heaven and others. Nothing would happen to them. He could find a chance to see them in the future. Chapter 4592. After making up his mind, Lin Yi became more and more eager to return, and the speed of the spirit bird unconsciously increased little by little. It was really scared by the ghost-eyed golden eagle just now. If it weren't for Lin Yi's powerful strength that killed the eagle, it and Lin Yi would be the food of the sea beast at the moment. After all, with the speed of the eagle, it could easily catch up with it. So the spirit bird's only thought at this time was to fly faster and faster. Only when it was so fast that all the flying spirit beasts couldn't catch up with it, then it would be really safe. North Island, 3 pavilions. Since the emergence of the newcomer king, Ma Daiqiang, especially after he stood out among the heroes in the inner door competition, the 3 pavilions had been talking about this time. Almost everyone was talking about this unprecedented newcomer in the nascent soul stage. Due to the emergence of Lin Yi and Ma Daiqiang, the 2 newcomer kings, even the clear cloud pavilion that had always been on the decline suddenly regained its former glory, looking like a salted fish that had turned over a new leaf. However, unexpectedly, the person in the limelight recently was not Ma Daiqiang of Blue Cloud Pavilion, but the young master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, Su Lingqiong, who had been silent for a long time. Since the last time he disappeared, this young master Su had changed from his usual arrogant and domineering attitude, becoming much more calm and reserved. This time, the reason why he became the focus of the conversation was not because he had done something eye-catching, but because he had succeeded in becoming the eldest senior brother of the outer court steward of Soaring Sky Pavilion. Of course, this news itself was not very eye-catching, and it couldn't even be regarded as news. After all, Su Lingqiong had been competing for this position for a long time, and he had made various preparations for this. It could be said that everyone knew his intentions. However, this time it still caused a great sensation, because Su Lingqiong broke through to the master of the nascent soul stage. When Su Lingqiong first started to build momentum for this, his strength was only at the peak of the foundation establishment stage. In less than a year, he actually crossed the entire gold core stage and became a master of the nascent soul stage. This kind of thing was simply shocking. Young Master Su's talent had been outstanding since he was young, and this had long been publicized to the world by those who were observant. But even so, it had never been boasted to such a shocking extent. Not to mention that others did not believe it. In fact, even Su Yuanjing, his own grandfather, felt dazed and often could not help but wonder if he was dreaming. From the peak of the foundation establishment stage to the nascent soul stage, if it was a cultivator with average talent, they might not be able to succeed even after spending 100 years. Even those so-called elites would need at least 8 to 10 years. If someone said that he wanted to cross the entire gold core stage within a year, he would definitely be regarded as a madman. However, the ironclad truth was right in front of them. Even if they didn't want to believe it, they had to believe it. After a moment of disbelief, they could only use one sentence to express their feelings. Extraordinary people do extraordinary things. Young Master Su was no ordinary genius, so there was nothing to be surprised about even if he didn't take the ordinary path. With the strength of the nascent soul stage, even if Su Lingcheng's deep background was not taken into account, it was still a humbling position. There was nothing to be surprised about, but apart from Su Lingcheng's sudden advancement to the nascent soul stage, there was another thing that shocked everyone. Ma Dongqiang, the newcomer king of Blue Cloud Pavilion, who was also a nascent soul stage expert, was in front of young Master Su Lingcheng. He actually considered himself as a little brother. This scene was really shocking. Although Su Lingcheng was also a nascent soul stage expert, this Ma Dongqiang was not weaker than him in terms of strength. In fact, he was even in the limelight recently. Speaking of status and position, Chen Xiaobei was not the only one. Ma Dongqiang was now the second senior brother of Blue Cloud Pavilion's inner sect steward. Even if Blue Cloud Pavilion was not as good as Soaring Sky Pavilion, the second senior brother of inner sect steward's position should be much stronger than the eldest senior brother of outer sect steward, right? After thinking about it, there was only one explanation. That was, Ma Dongqiang had taken a fancy to young Master Su's deep background. The other party had a grandfather who was a big shot in the Elder Council. This was the only place that Ma Dongqiang could climb up to. However, this explanation was still very far-fetched. Don't forget that Ma Dongqiang was often compared to Lin Yi, and he himself seemed to attach great importance to it. Every single thing, even if it was a small matter, he was determined to not be inferior to Lin Yi. But Lin Yi had never lowered his head to young Master Su before. On the contrary, it was young Master Su who repeatedly met with a rebuff. Why was Ma Dongqiang now willing to be young Master Su's little brother? If Ma Dongqiang only lowered his head to Su Lingcheng, even if the reason was a little far-fetched, everyone would feel that it was no big deal in the end. After all, everyone had their own ambitions. Back then, Lin Yi and Su Lingcheng didn't get along well. Maybe this Ma Dongqiang would hit it off with young Master Su. This wasn't impossible. But the problem was that Ma Dongqiang not only bowed and groveled in front of Su Lingcheng, the young master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, but even in front of Ming Tong, Kong Mingming, and Zhong Pingliang, he had to flatter them from time to time. It seemed that he was clearly ranked at the bottom of the group. This was really incomprehensible. No matter what, he was a nascent soul stage master. If it was said that in order to curry favor with young Master Su, he even had to flatter Ming Tong and the others, wasn't that too much of a bootlicker? Wasn't that too lacking in the dignity of a master? And what was unexpected was that Ma Dongqiang, who had always been very sensitive to the discussions in the streets, turned a deaf ear to everyone's one-sided negative comments this time. It gave people the feeling that he was prepared to go down the dark path and was determined to flatter Su Lingcheng and his group to the end. On this day, Su Lingcheng's group had once again gathered together. The bystanders were already used to this kind of scene. These people would gather once every 10 days. This group of people would mysteriously shut themselves up in a small house. No one knew what they were secretly discussing. In any case, everyone would keep their mouths shut when they came out of the small house. They would never announce to the bystanders what they were going to do, appearing to be unfathomable. Walking out of Su Lingcheng's mansion, Ma Dongqiang nodded and groveled as he watched Kong Mingming and the others leave. Only then did he return to Blue Cloud Pavilion alone. Although he was not the only Blue Cloud Pavilion disciple in the group, Ming Tong had always been inseparable from Su Lingcheng. They ate and lived together. Naturally, he wouldn't go to Blue Cloud Pavilion if there wasn't anything important. Returning to Blue Cloud Pavilion, Ma Dongqiang, who was previously bowing and groveling, immediately became arrogant. No matter who he met, he had a gloomy expression that made the group of Blue Cloud Pavilion disciples only dare to look at him from afar. Only when he was far away could they continue doing what they were supposed to do. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.